Chapter 1050. After the black stone of the divine ancestor fell off, the color of flesh and blood also appeared, as if a petrified god was about to wake up. Divine body? Nascent soul? What kind of level was that? Why had they never heard of it? Everyone was stunned, their faces filled with astonishment. Since you know about the nascent soul, void returning and Dao reunion cultivators, you must be an old monster from the ancient times. Jiang Tian sneered. Then you should know that what I want is to break the cage of this world and transcend this world. And your kingdom of heaven will be the stepping stone for me to jump out of this world. For the heavenly state, forming a light crystal and becoming a sacred emperor was the limit. As for what was above the sacred emperor, they knew nothing. But for Jiang Tian, who had lived for 10,000 years, the foundation establishment and golden core were just the starting points of cultivation. After that, there were the nascent soul formation, void returning and Dao reunion cultivators. Each level was more powerful than the last. When he reached the top of the divine realm, he would be able to swallow the sun and shatter the galaxy. Then, he would be considered to have achieved something and look down on the universe. Tai Chu, the sacred emperor has already said that he has surrendered to you and countless heavenly treasures are at your disposal. I'm already too old. I just want to live a little longer quietly, the divine ancestor said. Jiang Tian said coldly, I want the spirit chi recovery seed. Jiang Tian had just searched the sacred emperor's memory. After all, he only had 1,000 years of life and knew a lot, but he didn't know anything about the spirit chi recovery seed. Jiang Tian thought that the spirit chi recovery seed should be in the hands of this divine ancestor. Kang Techu, you're too greedy. You destroyed my sect and hurt my followers, but I didn't care. I even gave you this world. Isn't that enough? The voice of the statue of the sacred ancestor suddenly turned cold and was filled with rage. It sounded like divine thunder from the highest heavens. Not enough. Give me the spirit chi recovery seed, or I'll step on you and search your divine soul. Jiang Tian was resolute and decisive, pressing closer step by step. Good. I, Ancestor Saint Qi Liao, have presided over this world for countless years. You are the first one who dares to offend me. The rock on the divine ancestor's face fell off, revealing a face as smooth as jade. His eyes became colder and colder, and he said in a cold voice, Originally, this ancestor didn't want to bicker with you because it wasn't easy for you to cultivate. But since it involves the revival seed, this ancestor has no choice but to take action. At that moment, Yi Xiaoman realized something. When he spat out the name Saint Scorching, he was shocked. Her grandfather's body trembled violently, and his face was filled with horror. Grandfather, what's wrong? Yi Xiaoman asked curiously. She had never seen her grandfather so terrified before. Qi Liao. Back then, there were 10 consecutive suns, and one of the true gods of the suns submitted to our ancestor. Later on, he gave birth to a son, and that son was named Qi Liao. Our ancestor, Ho Yi, was killed by him and his father. Yi's face was pale, and his eyes were filled with shock, fear, and anger. Qi Liao. Holy ancestor Qi Liao. The son of one of the sun true gods. Yi Xiaoman was first stunned, then her face changed drastically. To the various races in the heavenly kingdom, this name was like thunder. She had heard of it countless times since she was a child. That was because he was one of the founders of the sacred hall. No one knew how long he had lived and how powerful he was. But wasn't there a rumor that he passed away 2,000 years ago? Yi Xiaoman was still asking in confusion. Boom. Thunderous booms rang out, causing the mountains to tremble and the earth to shake as the sacred ancestor rose to his feet. Countless large rocks fell on the temple and the square, forming huge craters and cracks. It was a shocking sight. At that moment, the divine ancestor had revealed his true appearance. His skin was like jade, and his eyes were like black crystals. He was wearing a black armor and a pair of boots. There were countless divine inscriptions on them, as if they were made from the deity realm. Boom! The entire first sacred mountain shook violently and sank 3 inches. It was as if 10,000 mountains had crashed down at the same time. On the first sacred mountain, Countless overlords of the sacred light tribe knelt down and kowtowed. They were so emotional that tears streamed down their faces. Kong Techu, you destroyed our orthodoxy and killed our sacred emperor. This time, the divine ancestor will tear you to pieces. There were also fanatical angels roaring at Jiang Tian. The ancestral patriarch of the sacred hall is still alive. Please tear Kong Techu to pieces. Many overlords of the sacred hall shouted. The divine ancestor Qiliao has awakened. Kong Techu won't be able to defeat him. The seven Saint Prince, Mei Ji, and Saint Joan of Arc were extremely certain, as if Jiang Tian was already a dead man. This was the divine ancestor, who had experienced the twilight of the gods and dominated the ancient earth like a true god. The patriarchs and the sacred emperors of the past were just his disciples. The holy knights were nothing more than his guards. As the divine ancestor walked forward step by step, the earth shook as if there was an earthquake. A terrifying energy fell like a river of stars, crushing the 10 sacred mountains and spreading for a few hundred miles. No one would be able to withstand such terrifying pressure. Huang Linger, Yi, Lu Huaxi, and the others on the second sacred mountain had already turned pale. Jiang Taichu, you interrupted this ancestor's slumber, forced me to appear, and ruined my cultivation. I will kill you until your soul is completely annihilated. The divine ancestor stood there 1,000 meters tall like a towering mountain. He looked at Jiang Tian as if he were looking at an ant. An earth-shattering energy pressed down on him like 10,000 mountains. In everyone's eyes, the 9 sacred mountains and the earth had disappeared, leaving only the divine ancestor's tall figure. Jiang Tian was like a sesame seed floating in front of a mountain. He was so small that he could be ignored. The divine ancestor's power was also at the nascent soul level. However, his Dharma power was indeed powerful, and he was even more powerful than Bai Zhe, who was at the same level. In fact, Bai Zhe had used a lot of his Dharma power to rebuild his body, and he hadn't recovered to his peak state. He would be at a disadvantage if he faced the divine ancestor. If a powerhouse like the divine ancestor were to descend to the mortal world, he would probably be able to sweep through all the major powers in the world within a few days. He would be able to fight against millions of mighty soldiers, sweep across the universe, and dominate the blue planet. He would stand at the peak of that world. "Ha, you're not weak, silly big guy." Everyone was terrified and full of respect. However, Jiang Tian wasn't afraid at all. He narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "You're just a nascent soul cultivator. You're only in the nascent soul realm. You haven't even formed a true nascent soul yet. 1,000 years of life is already the peak of the nascent soul realm. But you've lived for so long." Jiang Tian's speculation was not without reason. It could even be said that it pointed to the crucial point. The divine ancestor was born in the ancient times, and he had witnessed the formation of the Qiong dimension for tens of thousands of years. He wasn't like Bai Zhe, who was born many years after the formation of the heavenly star dimension. The divine ancestor might be tens of thousands of years old. However, even if he had a pure sacred light body, he wouldn't be able to live for so long. The divine ancestor's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked at Jiang Tian with a faint smile. "What price?" Jiang Tian touched his chin and said with a smile, "Normally, secret arts such as turtle breath, blood coagulation, and life will won't work. I don't see any tree of life sap, fortune pill, spirit fruit of resurrection, or any other life-prolonging elixirs." Jiang Tian glanced at the stones on the ground and said, "You used a secret art to petrify your body. You turned your body into stone and completely cut off your vitality, leaving only some of your divine soul to know the outside world. It's a good secret art, but it has a major drawback. When you first woke up, you were half dead and half petrified. Your power was only 1/3 of your peak state, or even lower." Jiang Tian had a mocking look in his eyes. He glanced at the angels kneeling around him and smiled. "If you want to recover your power, you'll need the flesh and blood of thousands of people. Do you really have the heart to kill your descendants?" Every word Jiang Tian said made the divine ancestor angrier. By the time he finished speaking, the divine ancestor's rage had already reached the heavens, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. I don't need the power of my peak state to kill you. The sacred ancestor's eyes blazed with holy light as he let out a furious harumph and took a step forward. Boom! As he stomped his foot, the huge square in front of the temple was filled with a gust of wind that swept across like a raging wave. The Saint Ancestor Mountain within 100 miles of it sank a few inches. Even the second sacred mountain was affected. Many elves, fallen angels, and giants with lower cultivation were completely shattered by the shockwaves and died. Countless people were frightened and stepped back. Wang Lin, who was surrounded by Jiang Tian's seventh metal true essence, also turned pale and sweat appeared on her forehead. Was this the power of a nascent soul formation cultivator? It was like a true god had descended to the world. No wonder they could cause disasters in the ancient times and were regarded as true gods by many human countries. Daoist, the divine ancestor roared. His giant hand covered the sky, and countless holy flames surrounded it as he grabbed at Jiang Tian. Even the ground of the square melted and countless buildings were set ablaze. Heaven and earth were scorching hot, as if lava was flowing through hell. At this moment he was a fiend celestial, and Jiang Tian was like a speck of dust, unable to withstand a single blow. Jiang Tian's face froze slightly. Even though the divine ancestor had just woken up from his petrification, he was still a nascent soul formation cultivator. Moreover, he had a special constitution. He had a pure sacred light body, so he could cast many sacred arts at will. This was not something that Bai Zhe could compare to. Jiang Tian stepped into the air. Boom! The air trembled and the space under his feet twisted and shattered, turning into billowing airwaves that spread in all directions. His body turned into a beam of light, dodging the divine ancestor's giant hand and shot up into the sky like a rocket. During this process, Jiang Tian's divine body was activated and the energy on his body rose steadily. In an instant, he turned into the seventh metal divine body and was 100 meters tall. The seventh metal divine body had reached phenomenal success, so he could turn into a Dharma form and act alone or merge with Jiang Tian. At this time, Jiang Tian had merged with the seventh metal divine body and his body was shining with golden light. At the same time, his thunder eyes flashed and an extremely vast amount of purple lightning poured into the golden blade. The final battle of the heavenly state had finally begun. Chapter 1051. Purple Lightning Blade. The slash exploded the air within a few kilometers and half of the square turned into a sea of lightning. A purple crack appeared in the space. The magnificent purple saber light was like Panga's giant axe cleaving open the chaos. It slashed open the heavens and the earth, and its might was even greater than before. The divine ancestor couldn't be subdued like Bai Zhe. That kind of 10,000-year-old monster was ambitious and cunning. It was difficult to control him even with a divine soul contract. Jiang Tian had to get rid of him once and for all. Jiang Tian would go to the ruins of deity in the future and explore the depths of the dimension. How could he allow others to sleep soundly beside his bed? Naturally, he could not leave this ticking time bomb behind and threaten Jiang Tian's foundation on Earth. Kong Teichu, you said that I'm not at my peak state. Are you? The divine ancestor laughed and said with disdain, I know. This ancestor knows that you must be that reincarnated body, or you must have possessed it. You are like a phoenix reborn, or a withered tree sprouting new branches. But even if you are the reincarnated old devil and have rich experience, even if you started cultivating in your mother's womb, you will only have 30 years of cultivation. Moreover, Earth is too filthy. Without the nourishment of spiritual energy, how can you be this ancestor's opponent? At this time, Jiang Tian showed his divine body of gung metal. He was 100 meters tall, but he still looked small in front of the divine ancestor. You're too weak. The divine ancestor threw his head back and laughed. He looked at Jiang Tian's purple lightning blade that could split an aircraft carrier as if it was nothing. He reached out a finger and blocked Jiang Tian's purple lightning blade. Even though half of his body was surrounded by lightning bolts, he wasn't afraid at all. He flicked his finger and Jiang Tian was knocked a few thousand meters away, crashing into a mountain and collapsing it. Is this the power of the divine ancestor? Countless people exclaimed as if they had seen a god. They had seen how powerful Jiang Tian was. He had killed thousands of people and no one could stop him. And yet, he was knocked away by the divine ancestor with a flick of his finger. Ha! Not bad, sacred ancestor. Again. Jiang Tian rushed out from the sky full of stones. His battle intent surged and soared into the sky. His purple lightning eyes flashed and endless electric light poured into the golden long saber. Suddenly, the blade became even more dazzling. As Jiang Tian leaped up, it slashed down with the force of Mount Tai. Chila. Before Jiang Tian's saber arrived, the violent purple lightning had already struck the divine ancestor's body and struck the ground. Suddenly, the crystallized ground melted and lava flowed out. There were also angels nearby. Even if they were at the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, they were still electrocuted into ashes and died. Could it be that even now, you still don't know the enormous gap between you and this ancestor? When the sacred ancestor saw this, a trace of regret flashed through his eyes. He was boiling with anger. With a cold shout, he placed his right hand behind his back and slapped the purple lightning blade. Immediately, Jiang Tian was sent flying. Rumble! Jiang Tian's body shot backward like an arrow. He crashed through 2 mountains before he could stabilize himself. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian's strength was at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. Coupled with the 3 powerful divine bodies and the many secret techniques he had accumulated in his previous life, he could kill all foundation establishment stage and even golden core stage cultivators. He wouldn't even be afraid of someone like Li Longyuan. However, the sacred ancestor's strength was indeed extraordinary. He had already surpassed the golden core stage and reached the nascent soul stage. He was only 1 step away from the nascent soul stage. Moreover, his sacred light body was second only to the divine body and the immortal body. It was much purer than the Holy Emperor. If it weren't for the fact that Qing'er and his daughter were in danger, with Jiang Tian's meticulous and steady character, he would never take such a risk. He would have broken through to the gold core realm and then come back to find trouble with him. However, Jiang Tian had no other choice. Jiang Tian's chest was shattered. Golden blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth and the purple lightning blade in his hand shattered. Jiang Tian. Wang Linger's heart sank. Her eyes were filled with pain and nervousness as she exclaimed. Jiang Tian's purple lightning blade was already invincible on Earth, not to mention that he had combined the gunmetal divine weapon and the purple lightning. He wouldn't even be afraid of nuclear weapons. However, it had been shattered by a palm strike, which showed how powerful the ancestral patriarch was. Cough, cough. Jiang Tian stood up shakily and coughed softly. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. There was a hint of determination and fanaticism deep in his eyes. He waved his hands and another gunmetal divine sword appeared. He rose into the air again and rushed towards the sacred ancestor. Kill! Jiang Tian's fighting spirit was surging. The wind was raging and lightning was lingering in the sky. Cracks were everywhere and it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Jiang Tian had gone mad from the slaughter. He attacked over and over again, and every single attack was fierce and formidable to the extreme, causing mountains and rivers to collapse and palaces to collapse. Even if a Golden Core Realm expert was here, the expert would be unable to resist a single strike of his. However, the sacred ancestor was indeed powerful. He blocked Jiang Tian's attacks with his right hand, as if it were made of divine gold. Meanwhile, in everyone's eyes, there was nothing else in the world, only a golden light ball that was flying up and down, howling and singing. There was only that proud figure that was beaten down to the ground time and time again, but then flipped over and continued to fight. Kong Teichu, are you still not going to surrender? You've exhausted my patience. Even though the sacred ancestor was able to suppress Jiang Tian, he was also extremely annoyed. The energy in his body was also being consumed rapidly. After all, he had just recovered and couldn't hold on for too long. You don't know what's good for you. When Jiang Tian attacked again, the sacred ancestor was completely enraged. His eyes were cold as he threw a punch. As he punched out, The boundless holy light within a radius of dozens of miles seemed to come alive as it surged towards his dantian and poured into his body. That area was actually as black as ink, as if it had been annihilated. Boom! The sky shook, the space shattered, and the sun and the moon were upside down. The power of that punch couldn't be described with words. Everyone only felt that there was nothing else in the world except for that punch. The fist, which was surrounded by sacred light, was like a sun in the sky. It shook the world and shocked everyone's minds. The fist was still very far away from everyone. However, everyone felt as if it had hit their hearts and their divine souls were about to pop out of their heads. Ah! Lu Huaxi exclaimed. He found himself standing still on the spot, and his vision was getting higher and higher. The scenery was changing rapidly. His divine soul had been shaken out of his body by the aftershock of the punch. And Jiang Tian, in the face of that punch, all of his divine powers and secret techniques were activated. The indestructible golden body, the Xianxia azure dragon, and the dancing divine tree were activated one after another. However, they were all shattered by the sacred ancestor's punch in an instant. In the end, the fist, which was surrounded by sacred light, landed on Jiang Tian's chest like a bullet train, sending him flying like a meteorite. Boom! Jiang Tianjing's golden divine body was shattered inch by inch. He turned into golden light and dispersed, revealing his mortal body. He was instantly sent flying dozens of miles away, falling from the first sacred mountain to the second sacred mountain like a kite with a broken string. Jiang Tian. Huang Linger flew into the sky with tears in her eyes and hugged Jiang Tian. The situation in front of her made her heart pound. Jiang Tian's chest was a bloody mess. His ribs were broken inch by inch, and there were many deep dents. Jiang Tian's face was full of pain. His eyes were dilated and blood was flowing out of his mouth. Jiang Tian, wake up. Huang Linger yelled with tears in her eyes as she fed Jiang Tian 8 kinds of elixirs to prolong his life. At the same time, she put her palm on Jiang Tian's back and infused her true essence into him. She made a hand seal and cast many healing spells on Jiang Tian as if they were free. Crush Yuan. The divine ancestor's eyes were cold and cruel. He didn't want to let Jiang Tian off the hook. He leaped over a dozen miles, and his feet, which were wearing cold iron battle boots, pierced through the clouds like a tank and stomped on Jiang Tian. Before he even stepped on him, the violent pressure had already arrived. Below Jiang Tian, the ground within a few thousand meters of the second Saint Mountain trembled slightly, and a huge footprint was left in it. Jiang Tian and Huang Linger were rolling on the ground because of the violent airflow. Their bodies trembled as if they were about to fall apart. Open! Huang Linger's beautiful eyes were filled with tears, but she was fearless. She raised her brows and glared at the giant foot descending from the sky and shouted. Essence Qi burst out of her body and the energy of the spirit wood rose to the sky, turning into wooden swords and thorns and stabbing at the sacred ancestor's foot. At the same time, spiritual trees rose into the sky one after another. They were tens of meters tall and wanted to support the foot. Having reached the early stage of the foundation establishment level and having a wood spirit root, Huang Linger's combat power was comparable to that of the elite disciples of the Immortal sacred grounds and famous sections. She could withstand the attacks of cannonballs and golden core cultivators. However, she was still far from the sacred ancestor. Kacha! Kacha! Explosive sounds rang out as countless wooden swords and thorns shattered. Under the violent pressure, the spiritual trees were reduced to powder like paper. They fluttered like snowflakes and fluttered like butterflies. Open! Huang Linger's body shook and she almost spurted out blood. She was already severely injured, but she still roared and released dozens of vines to entangle the sacred ancestor's foot. However, Huang Linger managed to hold on for a second or two, which gave Jiang Tian time to catch his breath. Open! Jiang Tian's pupils contracted as he was nourished by the wood healing art. His divine soul returned to its original position and he suddenly woke up. He roared and activated his 3 divine bodies at the same time. Divine General Gengjin's eyes were cold as he raised his saber towards the sky, slashing repeatedly with an indomitable will. The Xianxia azure dragon soared into the sky, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The whirling divine tree propped up the sky. One of its branches wrapped around Wang Lin and sent her dozens of kilometers away. Jiang Tian killed until he went crazy. He was like a demon and a god. This battle was destined to be recorded in the annals of history, shake both worlds, and stun the world. Chapter 1052. You're just an ant trying to shake a tree. How laughable! The divine ancestor sneered, his eyes full of mockery. Holy light gushed out from the giant foot, forming another giant foot that was more than 100 meters long. It was like a god's foot stepping on the air, and its power was increased tenfold. At his level of cultivation, he had already reached the realm of being able to control his body freely. Every move he made was a killing move. He was not like the other light sacred clan members who had to use vertical pupils, wings, or light sword techniques to attack. Boom. The light sacred foot stepped on the Gingjin divine general, the whirling divine tree, and the Xianxia green dragon. Under the unparalleled power, the three collapsed one by one. In the end, Jiang Tian was stomped into the ground, and the area within 100 meters sank by more than 30 meters. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, revealing a shocked and horrified expression. How powerful was Jiang Tian? He was able to push through several sacred mountains as if he was chopping vegetables. Even the elders and saint emperors could not stop him. But now, he could not even withstand a single blow from the divine ancestor. Especially Wang Lin, Xiaoman, Meiji, and the other girls, they were shocked to the point their beautiful faces turned pale, and they were extremely anxious. You're not dead yet? What a tough insect! The divine ancestor stood proudly on the second sacred mountain. He raised his foot and bent down, looking at Jiang Tian curiously. Boom! A beam of golden light broke through the rolling mountain rocks and soared 1,000 meters into the air. Jiang Tian appeared again. At this time, Jiang Tian was covered in blood. His internal organs were all damaged, and large pieces of his bones were broken. He was on the verge of collapsing. He could not even stand properly. He was severely injured. Fight! At this time, although Jiang Tian was severely injured, he was fearless. His fighting spirit was boiling like the sea. Even in the face of an expert who could suppress him, Jiang Tian's fighting spirit was still at its peak. In the cultivation world, the longer a cultivator's life was, the higher their cultivation was, and the more knowledgeable they were, but the more cowardly they were, and the more wretched their actions were. The more knowledgeable the cultivators were, the more they knew how terrifying and unpredictable this vast space-time was. The universe was like a dark forest filled with wild beasts. In this dark forest, every cultivator was a hunter with a gun, but they were also weak prey. If a cultivator wanted to survive, they had to move stealthily through the forest like a ghost. Even their breathing had to be done carefully. Any life form that exposed their existence would be quickly destroyed. Without absolute strength, they would never expose themselves. Because of this, Jaya, who was only 2,000 years old, was very vigilant and fearful because he had seen too much power. The sacred ancestor was also terrified of death and the possibility of an invader. He had turned himself into a half-dead stone statue and would not easily expose himself. Logically speaking, Jiang Tian, who once had a lifespan of 10,000 years, should be even more terrified. That's right. In his previous life, even when he had reached the firmament, he had still been careful and meticulous in his planning. For every operation he would often tremble with fear, as if he was treading on thin ice. He had to plan and deduce countless times. However, at this moment, Jiang Tian was not afraid at all, because he had love in his heart. He loved Qing'e, his daughter, his family, Tianqing school, and the world. In this world, having countless fetters was the only way to live a meaningful life. A life without fetters was a pool of stagnant water. Fetters. They were Jiang Tian's weakest point, and also his strongest armor, the armor that made him fearless. For Qing'e, for his daughter, he was willing to give up his life. Without them, he would live like a dead tree in his previous life. Even if he could live forever, what was the point of that? Jiang Tian recalled that in his previous life, Jiang Tian had fought impulsively and recklessly several times. However, he felt that at that time, he also had the thought of seeking death, of destroying his own son and killing himself. In his previous life without Qingya, living was so boring that it was worse than death. Do you still want to fight? The divine ancestor paced slowly with his hands behind his back. His eyes were cold, arrogant, and domineering. His voice was like a bell that shook heaven and earth. Kang Techu, you are no match for me. If you submit and sign a contract of light with me and become my slave, this ancestor will spare your life. Ah, divine ancestor, you have underestimated me, Kang Techu. Do you think you can control my strength? Jiang Tian kept vomiting blood, but he was laughing maniacally. His piercingly cold killing intent, fiery fighting spirit, and unyielding fighting spirit made everyone's hearts jump. All right, I've used up most of your qi and blood. I already know your Achilles heel. This time, I'll definitely destroy your divine soul. Rumble. Jiang Tian suddenly slapped the sky-devouring demonic gourd and took out the Sky Shaker Bow. Sky Shaker Bow. A hint of fear appeared on the divine ancestor's face when he saw that. This bow was used by the ancient Grand Cultivator, Hou-yi. It had once shot through mountains and rivers and killed 8 of his ancestors. Even though countless years had passed, he still felt a chill down his spine when he saw the divine bow again. However, he quickly calmed down and smiled mockingly. This giant bow is indeed extraordinary. It is the Sky Shaker Bow. However, for thousands of years, no one has been able to pull it open or wield it. He was very confident and his eyes were filled with mockery. That is because the ancient Grand Magus physique is gone. Kang Techu, do you think you are so great just because you can dominate the world of Earth? You are wrong. You are too ignorant. Even if you have this bow, it is useless if you do not have the ability to wield it. At the same time, he took a big step forward, covering a distance of 10 miles with each step. He quickly approached Jiang Tian. Sigh, why did Immortal Master Jiang take out this giant bow? He can't wield it at all. Won't he be at the mercy of others? Seeing this, Yi Xiaoman exclaimed angrily and anxiously. In her opinion, Jiang Tian was wasting his time by taking out this giant bow. He would be killed easily. Seeing this, Lu Huaxi was also very anxious. Even Yi shook his head in disappointment. In such a dangerous battle, the slightest mistake could lead to a fatal disaster. Is that so? Standing in the air, Jiang Tian held the giant bow in his hand. Suddenly, he felt a connection with the giant bow. He poured his blood into the giant bow. Suddenly, the divine inscriptions started to shine. Dazzling flames soared into the sky, illuminating the area within a radius of 10 kilometers. At the same time, the Sky Shaker Bow shrunk until it was 1/3 of its original size. At this moment, the giant bow seemed to be very compatible with Jiang Tian. It was as if it was specially made for Jiang Tian. What? He has awakened the giant bow? Yi Xiaoman's face was filled with disbelief. Her beautiful eyes were wide open. How did he do it? Lu Huaxi and Yi were also shocked. What? A Grand Magus body? A treasure body? No, a divine body. You've awakened the divine body with your divine blood. Seeing this, sacred ancestor Qi Huo was shocked. A hint of fear flashed in his eyes as he steadied himself. Then, a greedy and passionate look appeared on his cold face. He carefully approached Chen Fan and said coldly, "Kid, I can't believe that a mortal like you has cultivated a divine body. As long as I turn my sacred body into a divine body, I will be immortal. The heavens are helping me." What he didn't know was that Jiang Tian had 3 supreme divine body secret techniques that were far more powerful than ordinary divine bodies. Even if he only had an ordinary divine body, he would be able to increase his lifespan by a few hundred years or even 1,000 years. He would then be able to break through to the nascent soul level or even the soul formation level. The sacred ancestor of light approached Chen Fan step by step like a fierce tiger about to catch a cunning fox. Are you going to hand over the techniques of building your body obediently, or do you want me to kill you, extract your soul, and torture you with true fire until you tell me all your secrets? The divine body forging technique was a top-secret art in the universe. He guessed that Jiang Tian was the reincarnation of an old fiend, or even an alien race. In that case, other than this secret technique, there must be other shocking cultivation techniques. If the multidimensional worlds knew about it, there would be a great war to fight for those treasures. Old bastard, you're about to die and you still want my cultivation arts. If I were you, I would have run away. Jiang Tian laughed. He held the bowstring with 3 fingers and drew a semicircle in the air with his right elbow. He then pulled the bow into a full moon. Kong Teichu, you're too ignorant. This is the heaven-shaking bow, but you don't have the sun-shooting arrows. The sacred ancestor of light sneered. Then he suddenly froze as if he had seen a ghost, because he saw that the wind and clouds around Jiang Tian had changed color. Boom! There was a loud noise. The giant demon character above Jiang Tian's head, which was infused with the blood and cultivation of 10,000 people, turned into a straight red beam of light and hit the heaven-shaking bow. An arrow immediately formed on the heaven-shaking bow. This arrow was less than half a meter long. It was sparkling and translucent, and its entire body was blood red. It looked as if it was carved out of agate, magnificent and moving. However, it was full of killing intent. Chapter 1053. You can make the sun-shooting arrow. Fear and greed appeared on the divine ancestor's face and his eyes became brighter. He felt that Jiang Tian was a treasure. Once he got his hands on him, he would benefit a lot. Of course, Jiang Tian was also very dangerous. Kong Teichu, don't you know that you're in trouble because of your wealth? If you don't surrender, you'll be throwing an egg at a rock. I won't let you go today. He formed a profound and obscure hand seal, and within his dantian, a bright light erupted and emitted an enormous rumbling sound that was like rolling thunder, shaking people to the point of intense pain in their eardrums and causing them to feel dizzy. Those with lower levels of cultivation vomited blood and died. An extremely bright light came out of his body. That was the explosion of his golden core. The bright sacred light was enough to level mountains and crush the earth. Every ray of it could kill a foundation establishment overlord. The boundless holy light eventually turned into a dazzling sword that resembled an intercontinental missile in front of his chest. He flicked his finger at the back of the sword hilt, and the light sword erupted like a sun, pushing toward Jiang Tianheng. Forming a nascent soul was between the perfected golden core and the nascent soul. It was sometimes called a fake nascent soul. His golden core was extremely condensed and was much more powerful than that of normal cultivators. The true essence inside was as heavy as a mountain and as vast as the ocean. It was inexhaustible and could kill a golden core cultivator as easily as killing a chicken. Besides, Jiang Tian hadn't reached the golden core level yet. Qi Liao, you're lucky to have seen this arrow. You deserve to die. Jiang Tian said calmly. Suddenly, his fingers loosened, and the bowstring bounced back at high speed, brushing past his fingertips. The shooting sun arrow condensed by his blood essence suddenly disappeared. In a flash, a gust of wind came out of the bowstring and swept across 10 kilometers. The sound of the bowstring was like a dragon's roar. No one saw how the shooting sun arrow had been fired. They only saw a white spatial turbulence appear 100 meters away from Holy Ancestor Qi Liao's chest. The divine ancestor's eyes were filled with fear and astonishment. He could feel that familiar aura. Even though it had been here for a long time, it was still filled with killing intent and chilliness that made him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. This arrow was formed from the blood essence and cultivation of 10,000 experts. It was incomparably sharp. The sky-shaking bow was originally an ancient treasure of the sky race. Its origin was extraordinary. When the arrow was shot, the entire space seemed to freeze. Time seemed to stop, and even the wind seemed to stop. Everything became incomparably slow, because it was too fast. When the arrowheads came into contact with the light crystal sword, the light sword shattered in an instant. The fragments shot out in all directions and turned into rolling air currents that spread out in all directions. Wherever they passed, the tall mountains collapsed and the earth trembled. At this moment, the 10 holy mountains were shaking together, and even the entire kingdom of heaven was shaking as if it was going to collapse. What's that? Is the world going to be destroyed? In the cities, on the mountains, and in the world, countless holy clans of light and countless mortals were awakened. They looked in the direction of the Saint Ancestor Mountain in shock and fear. Puchi, the sacred ancestor, looked down at his chest in shock, and his eyes were filled with grief and despair. He saw a huge hole in his dantian. Through this hole, he could see the desperate and fearful faces of some of the angels behind him. Jiang Tian's arrow had pierced through the sacred ancestor's burning danan. It was as if the arrow was in Jiang Tian's hand a moment ago, and the next moment, it was in front of the sacred ancestor's chest. This shooting sun arrow seemed to have transcended time and space. It ignored distance and all obstacles. The dazzling arrow pierced through the sacred ancestor's dantian, and extremely exaggerated blood splattered everywhere. The bloody flower brandished its claws, sparkling and translucent. Radiance pervaded the air, making it appear colorful and beautiful. Then, the shooting sun arrow continued to fly upward and shot into the first holy mountain 100 kilometers away. There was a loud rumble. The first holy mountain collapsed, and the mountain rocks rolled down like a torrent. The sound was like rolling thunder. In an instant, countless angels and experts were killed. Jiang Tian had used a secret magic to condense this arrow with the curse power of the killing command, as well as the blood essence and cultivation bases of 10,000 powerful experts. This arrow was at least equivalent to the combined attack of thousands of Foundation establishment cultivators. This arrow was able to kill a peak-stage golden core cultivator and severely injure a nascent soul cultivator. This is too fast. Kong Teichu can actually draw the ancient divine bow. This is unbelievable. In history, the giants and the Templars fought for this bow. Countless grand cultivators obtained it, but no one has ever drawn it. That's right. I heard that even the sacred emperors can't do it. Could it be that he is the real god? Countless people exclaimed. Even Yi and Lu Huaxi's faces were full of disbelief. They were so excited that their hands trembled. The Taichu true god is invincible. The young giants roared loudly, cheering for Jiang Tian. It turns out that he has the ability to refine the evil hunting order. Mickey murmured to herself. St. Joan's face was pale. The seventh Saint Prince trembled as if his parents had died. He whispered to his followers behind him to prepare a flying Dharma artifact so that they could escape at any time. At this moment, the originally clear sky instantly turned gloomy. A wisp of dark clouds covered the artificial sun. There was even a shadow on the sun, making it look dim. Looking up at the dark sky, the sacred ancestor curled his lips and forced a smile. It was a heart-wrenching smile. It was unknown how long he had been through. He had once dominated the ancient earth, suppressed the ancient countries, and many civilizations. He had even joined forces with his father and brother to kill the ancient Huaxia Almighty Ho-Yi, occupying this part of the world. Later, due to the limited resources, he stopped at the nascent soul level. In order to survive and obtain opportunities, he had to use a secret art to petrify himself and turn into a half-human, half-stone monster with the nourishment of the spirit chi seed. All of this was for the Grand Tao, to obtain eternal life, to transcend this world and become immortal. But on the first day of his recovery, his dantian was pierced by Jiang Tian and he lost half of his power and lifespan. Anger and indignation gradually rose in his eyes, as if he were going to burn the sky. Kong Teichu, you can't kill me! Following an earth-shattering roar. Boom! He stomped his feet on the ground and flew toward the first sacred mountain. His hands formed a series of hand seals, and his lips moved quickly as he chanted an incantation that was difficult to pronounce, but loud and clear. As he cast a secret art, the giant cross in front of the light sacred temple suddenly emitted endless sacred light like a lighthouse, forming a beam of light that penetrated the world and struck the sacred ancestor. In the blink of an eye, the countless crosses of all sizes in the heavenly kingdom began to glow brightly as they headed toward Mount Sage Ancestor. The sacred ancestor of the light sacred ancestor used light and faith to nourish his body. Faith was his food and also his healing medicine. In an instant, he devoured the power of faith that countless crosses had gathered over the past 10,000 years. His damaged dantian and wounds were immediately repaired, and he even formed a new golden core. However, his body had shrunk to 100 meters tall. Apparently, his combat power had suddenly decreased. You want to use the power of faith to heal your body? Unfortunately, you don't have the chance anymore. Jiang Tian's handsome face showed a hint of mockery, and the bow was like a full moon. The artificial sun in the sky shot down a beam of light that was as thick as a bucket, enveloping Jiang Tian and the giant bow. The giant bow absorbed the beam of light, and the artificial sun in the sky dimmed for a moment. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling golden arrow was formed on the giant bow. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and ruthless as he shot the second arrow. The crowd still couldn't see the shooting sun arrow, but they saw the divine ancestor's body tremble violently and let out a mournful howl. Then, like a huge leaf fluttering in the wind, he was sent flying. Clang! The shooting sun arrow shone brightly and pierced the sacred ancestor's newly formed dantian. This time, except for the explosion in his chest, the upper body of sacred ancestor Qi Liao cracked inch by inch. Even his beautiful jade-like face had many shocking cracks, which were crawling and interweaving like earthworms. Kong Teichu, you can draw the heaven-shaking bow twice. Where are you from? Sacred ancestor Qi Liao shouted in panic and desperation. His face was full of fear and disbelief. Even in the ancient times, when golden core cultivators and nascent soul cultivators were everywhere, nobody could draw the heaven-shaking bow twice in a row. However, Jiang Tian had done it. He couldn't believe it. Sacred ancestor Qi Liao had only heard that there were people in the great sects at the center of the universe who could draw the heaven-shaking bow twice in a row. However, that was only a legend. Nobody had seen it with their own eyes. He didn't expect to see it in person today, and he also didn't expect that the person who was shot was himself. Chapter 1054. Boom. Sacred ancestor Qi Liao's eyes were filled with unwillingness as he made a hand seal. Instantly, the angels and the holy clan of light collapsed as they screamed in agony. They turned into rivers of blood mixed with light and poured into his body. These were all his descendants. However, at this moment, he did not care about anything else in order to survive. In an instant, he absorbed the blood essence, light, and cultivation of thousands of descendants, forcibly forming a physical body and recovering his cultivation. Jiang Tian did not answer. His eyes were cold and emotionless. He pulled the bow to the fullest again, and a holy light arrow as powerful as the one before condensed on it. Kongtu, why don't we shake hands and make peace? I'll be your servant and watch over this world for you. I can also give you the spiritual Qi seeds. I won't leave any of them alive. Sacred ancestor Qi Liao waved his hands in front of his chest with a hint of pleading in his eyes. Under Jiang Tian's terrifying shooting sun arrows, he had no power to resist at all. If there were another 2 arrows, he would definitely die. Ha, you're not that stupid. I'll only be at ease if you die. Take another arrow from me. Go to hell. Jiang Tian was not going to let him go. He shot a 3rd arrow without hesitation. Jiang Tian had a hard time shooting this arrow. The consumption of blood essence, cultivation base, and lifespan by using this bow was terrifying. Even a nascent soul cultivator might not be 100% confident in pulling it apart. Jiang Tian was only a foundation establishment cultivator at the moment. If he did not have 3 powerful divine bodies, he would not be able to control it. When the bowstring was fully drawn, strands of gray gradually appeared on his hair, and his skin quickly withered. However, Jiang Tian did not care at all. He still shot an arrow. Ah! Sacred ancestor Qi Liao screamed in pain as he was shot again. Large blobs of blood bloomed in the air, and he almost completely shattered. When his body was formed again, he was already the size of an ordinary person. He was as thin as firewood, and his hair was withered. He was hunched over like an ordinary old man who was about to die. Coupled with the fact that his chest was stained with blood, his armor was shattered, and his clothes were in rags. So, Where was the strict and imposing aura from before? Kang Teichu, you forced me to do this. Let's perish together. Facing the threat of death, sacred ancestor Qi Liao was enraged. The light crystals in his body were all ignited, turning into a blazing light that pierced through heaven and earth, shooting toward the artificial sun. At the same time, he cast a secret technique and chanted an incantation. Suddenly, the artificial sun seemed to have been detonated and let out a loud bang. The boundless light transformed into a blazing pillar of light, sweeping towards Jiang Tian. Yi was shocked as he recalled a terrifying legend. It was said that in the past, there was a sky race that had a round sky and a round earth. They had an artificial sky with a starry sky pattern that simulated the heavens and revolved endlessly. However, the 9 radiant race cultivators had invaded. They had activated a huge radiant ritual implement, and it was as if 10 suns had connected. Yi shot and killed 8 of them, but he didn't kill Chilio's father. The artificial sun might have been the radiant ritual implement they had used back then. Yi had modified it into a Dharma artifact and refined it into a starry sky pattern. Once sacred ancestor Qi Liao activated it, it could kill billions of people and destroy a world. I was going to get this sun anyway. So, I'll get it in advance. Jiang Tian smiled and pulled the bow to the fullest again. However, this time, there were no radiant arrows on the bowstring. While everyone was puzzled, suddenly, a giant golden figure appeared behind Jiang Tian. That figure was so tall that it was at least 1,000 feet tall. It was wearing a high hat and a wide belt. 12 crowns hung down, and its sleeves were fluttering in the wind. Inside, there was a suit of armor. It was both intelligent and brave. His eyes shot out like lightning as he stood behind Jiang Tian. He was even taller than the first sacred mountain, as if he were going to support the world. It was a shocking scene. He picked up the stars and the moon, held the sun in his hand, and stepped on the endless river of time. When he raised his hand, the world would change. When he moved, mountains and rivers would change. When he took a step, he would break an era. Suddenly, an extremely old and majestic aura spread out. He was like a divine the arch who ruled over everything in the universe, suppressing the entire world of heavenly state. It was divine the arch Gengjin from the desolate age of the universe. The Gengjin divine body started out as an indestructible golden body Dharma form. When it reached its peak, it could evolve into divine the arch Gengjin. This is the last arrow. I'll shoot you and the artificial sun together. Jiang Tian grinned crazily and shot out an invisible arrow with a flick of his finger. Behind him, divine the arch Gengjin also pulled the bow to the fullest and the arrow shot out like a shooting star. The sharpness of the arrow couldn't be described with words. It seemed to have transcended time and space and could suppress everything. It was the divine power and secret art of divine the arch Gengjin, the Xinghe arrow. When the arrow was shot, divine ancestor Qiliao turned into a beam of golden light and shot towards the artificial sun. He was so fast that he couldn't be seen with the naked eye. 100 kilometers was just a flick of his finger. As long as he got into the artificial sun, he would be bathed in endless sacred light to repair his body and even use this treasure to kill Jiang Tian. Meanwhile, he was getting closer and closer to the artificial sun. He was only a kilometer away. Bathed in the endless sacred light, the broken parts of the divine ancestor's body were quickly repaired. His body became taller and his face became younger again. His energy didn't decrease but increased and he immediately reached his peak state. But then he suddenly stopped. Boom! The projection of the primordial 7th metal god emperor behind Jiang Tian had already collapsed and turned into golden 7th metal true essence that drilled into Jiang Tian's body. At this moment, Jiang Tian's figure was on the verge of collapse as he ceaselessly coughed up blood, and his countenance was pale like a sheet of paper, yet he started laughing loudly in delight. It's going to explode. Divine ancestor Qiliao was terrified. He wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Boom! The artificial sun exploded, as if 100 nuclear weapons had exploded at the same time. In the sky, an incomparably huge flame flower bloomed, burning the void within a radius of 100 miles. It was so piercing that it made people tear up. Countless palaces and mountains on the first sacred mountain immediately turned into lava, and the angels and divine knights were vaporized. In a blink, a giant hole was torn open in the sky, revealing the deep space outside. But in a blink, it returned to normal. The endless light of the artificial sun was out of control. It was no longer sacred light, but the true fire of the sun's sacred ancestor Qiliao, who was only 1 kilometer away from the explosion, melted his armor, which could withstand multiple nuclear weapons. His body, which seemed to be made of precious gold, cracked and melted into a liquid as if it were made of wax, which flowed down. In the end, with an unwilling roar, his body and soul were melted by the endless light and turned into steam, completely vanishing from this world. Jiang Tian's arrow had destroyed the sun and killed a nascent soul cultivator. Countless people in Heavenly Kingdom looked up in shock and trembled. They saw the man in ragged clothes covered in blood in the sky. He was like a thin leaf in the wind, about to fall. He covered his mouth with his fist and kept coughing up blood. Although his back was in such a sorry state, at this moment, in this world, there was nothing else in the eyes of the crowd. There was only him. In everyone's eyes, he was like an invincible fiend god, crushing everything and standing in the sky. Then, in front of countless people's shocked gazes, the artificial sun broke away from the star atlas in the sky and crashed into the first holy mountain with the broken pieces of fire, burning half of the first holy mountain into lava. The sky suddenly dimmed and the sun and the moon were upside down. The eternal day turned into a cold night. Boom! The earth trembled, and the 10 Saint Mountains shook violently, collapsing unceasingly. Rolling boulders surged down like a torrential flood. Even all the cities and mountains in Heavenly Kingdom were shaking violently, as if they were going to rush out of the folded space and appear in the universe. At that moment, countless people in Heavenly Kingdom were terrified and their souls were about to leave their bodies. They were extremely shocked, as if they had seen a ghost. At that moment, the sun fell and the stars dimmed. The world lost its color and the rivers and mountains shook. Jiang Tian was the only one left in this world. He stood in the sky with a giant bow in his hand, illuminating the world like the sun god. Chapter 1055. Swish, swish, swish. Huang Linger flew in the air and helped Jiang Tian land on the second sacred mountain. She fed him a healing pill and cast a few Dharma arts on Jiang Tian's wounds. The entire Heavenly Kingdom was in dead silence. All the overlords watching the battle were silent and couldn't make even the slightest sound. They stood there motionlessly like statues. He only saw the 10-kilometer-wide artificial sun on the first sacred mountain that was gradually dimming and collapsing. He saw the first sacred mountain in a mess. They immediately understood what all this meant. Their divine ancestor had awakened, suppressed a world and activated the artificial sun, but he was still killed by Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian even simulated the will of the divine the Arch and shot the sun with an arrow. This meant that Jiang Tian was already the most powerful being in this world. Who would dare to offend him? Phew! Jiang Tian slowly let out a mouthful of turbid air as he performed a secret technique. Immediately, his wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. His qi and blood also rose steadily. Right then, Jiang Tian already had 3 constitutions: azure wood, aged metal and black water. He could absorb many elements around him and turn them into true essence. Besides, his dantian had formed a world of its own and the 3 constitutions could transform with each other. His absorption speed was also much faster than normal people. Even though Jiang Tian forcefully summoned the ancient aged metal divine the Arch and Jiang Tian forcefully pulled the sky-shaking bow, his true essence, divine will, life and blood qi had reached an unbelievable level. However, Jiang Tian was still recovering with difficulty. Right then, the masters of the sacred mountain, the knights of light and the elders who had fled far away were struggling and hesitating. Right then, Jiang Tian's power had dropped to the first level of the foundation establishment level. This was their last and only chance. If Jiang Tian recovered for a while longer, they wouldn't have a chance to kill Jiang Tian anymore. They could only be suppressed by Jiang Tian. Do you want to attack the Taichu true god? You'll have to go through the giants first. Bi spurred his mount and soared into the sky. He led his clansmen and charged towards the remnants of the sacred hall, roaring loudly. We are the Dao protectors of the true God of absolute beginning. Whoever dares to invade will be killed without mercy. Whoever dares to take a step forward, we will trample on their sacred mountain and exterminate them completely. Come up, come up. I've been wanting to fight with you for a long time. Today, I'll take this opportunity to learn a thing or two from you. The giants were all very ferocious as they rushed over from all directions. Their battle intent was boiling like a tide, and their morale was high. They rushed into the heavens, wearing beast skin clothes, riding giant beasts, waving their weapons as they shouted. They regarded Jiang Tian as their savior and the hope of their tribe's revival. At this moment, they were willing to fight to the death to protect Jiang Tian. They surrounded Jiang Tian like an iron bucket. The fallen angels also rushed over and blocked the remaining Templar army like a human wall. Lu Huaxi's gray pupils turned, and he suddenly swung the Grim Reaper scythe. He released a terrifying aura and chuckled, "Sacred masters, why don't you come over and kowtow to the new King of Heaven, the true God of absolute beginning? Slow down. If you don't show enough sincerity, don't blame my scythe for being ruthless." After hearing that, the sacred masters immediately reacted, as if they had just woken up from a dream. A ray of sacred light came from afar and appeared in front of Jiang Tian. It bowed deeply and said respectfully, "Thank you." He bowed respectfully and said, "The master of the third sacred mountain greets the true God of absolute beginning." This sacred master was the one who had accompanied the seven saint prince to deliver the letter of challenge to Jiang Tian. He had already formed light crystals and had the strength of a fake core cultivator. And yet, he knelt in front of Jiang Tian right then, as if he were a subject meeting a superior emperor. Both Jiang Tian and sacred ancestor Qi Liao were too far away from becoming true gods. But right then, Jiang Tian had destroyed the sun and attacked the sacred ancestor. The power he displayed made him feel like a true god. "All right." Jiang Tian nodded. "From now on, the third sacred mountain will serve the true god of the Taichu sect. I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life." He turned his head slightly and scanned the surroundings with a stern and cold gaze. He said in a cold voice, "I'm now protecting the true god of the Taichu sect. If anyone dares to oppose me, they'll have to go through me first." The other holy lords, knights, and managers of the Angel Division were all at the Foundation establishment stage and even the pseudo-core stage. They all rushed over and kowtowed to Lin Ming. The army was defeated. At this point, a dozen overlords had already surrendered. Even if the rest of them wanted to resist, they couldn't do it alone. They realized that the situation was hopeless, so they also came over to greet him. At this moment, Lu Huaxi was smug. No matter whether they were willing or not, they had to surrender. From that day on, Heavenly Kingdom would welcome a new master and all the previous overlords would be swept away into the dust of history. On the other hand, Wang Lin, who was supporting Jiang Tian, felt both heartache and joy. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she muttered with a choked voice, "Jiang Tian, you won, you finally won. That's great. He's really completed the earth-shattering task of conquering Heavenly Kingdom and dominating the Sacred Hall." At this time, Saint Joan of Arc, with a slender and graceful figure and a beautiful and holy face, stood there in a daze, unable to believe it. The scenes of him getting to know Jiang Tian flashed through his mind like a merry-go-round. Before every battle with Jiang Tian, she thought that Jiang Tian had no chance of winning, but Jiang Tian always turned the tide and created miracles. However, she was too superstitious about the power of the Sacred Hall. In her mind, the sacred ancestor and the sacred emperor were as unshakable as mountains. In the end, she still stood on the opposite side of Jiang Tian. But at this time, when Jiang Tian overturned the Sacred Hall, killed the sacred ancestor and sacred emperor, and dominated a world, she regretted it and realized how stupid her choice was. At this time, she was trembling and her face was as pale as paper. She was so scared that she almost peed on the spot. She followed the crowd to Jiang Tian and kowtowed and apologized. You have no chance to worship the true god of Taichu. You are a traitor. Blasphemer. After receiving Jiang Tian's look, Lu Huaxi swung his sickle and cut off the woman's head without hesitation. Blood splattered. St. Joan's face was still full of shock and regret before she died, as if she couldn't accept that she had died like this. The beautiful woman in the crowd was splashed with blood. She was so scared that she trembled and kowtowed even more happily. However, she had mixed feelings in her heart. Originally, she had been in contact with Jiang Tian and had the opportunity to stand on Jiang Tian's side. At that time, the fallen angels had even invited her to overthrow the sacred hall together. However, she doubted Jiang Tian's strength and refused. If she chose to fight side by side with Jiang Tian, not only would her status rise in the future, but also the entire elf race would benefit greatly. He won. He killed the sacred ancestor Qiliao with the heaven-shaking bow and destroyed the sun. Is he really a true god, an ancient god? Yi Xiaoman looked at Jiang Tian in a new light. It was as if she had met Jiang Tian for the first time. At the same time, her beautiful face flushed red and turned pale, and she felt extremely ashamed, guilty, and dejected because of her disrespect and contempt towards Jiang Tian. At this time, she realized that Jiang Tian was too powerful. It was not something she could imagine at all. She was like an ant that couldn't estimate the height of a mountain. Her vision was too limited. True God Taichu, the sacred hall and the second sacred mountain have been destroyed in the battle. Please go to the third sacred mountain to rest for a while. The third sacred master invited him with a fawning expression. Jiang Tian had not recovered from his injuries and needed to rest for a few days. He agreed readily and nodded. At the side, Lu Huaxi's gray eyes flashed with a hint of jealousy. He cursed in his heart. This guy is so good at flattery. He stole my lead and even called himself a protector. How shameless! Jiang Tian walked towards the palace of the third sacred mountain and said calmly, Lu Huaxi, you too protect me. Lu Huaxi hurriedly followed him. He was overjoyed and happy. Master still hasn't forgotten me. Chapter 1056. Kong Taichu, the devil of earth, had won. This news was like a nuclear explosion, instantly shaking the entire kingdom of heaven. It had only been 2 days since Jiang Tian came to kingdom of heaven, overturned the holy church, killed the divine ancestor, and became the ruler of this world. But such earth-shattering changes had occurred. Who could remain calm? In the eyes of the residents of kingdom of heaven, Jiang Tian would either be killed immediately or be trapped in a protracted war and be forced to flee pathetically. But they did not expect such an ending. Especially the last battle at the Shengzu mountain. The divine ancestor woke up, and holy light filled the sky and shook the world. Jiang Tian appeared as the ancient divine emperor Gingjin, and shot an arrow that caused the artificial sun to explode and fall. The terrifying waves of energy swept across the 10 holy mountains and shook half of kingdom of heaven. Countless people could feel the terrible lethality. The ancient divine night has fallen. The 12 elders have died in battle. The divine emperor was trampled to death. The divine ancestor woke up from the statue, but he was killed by Kong Taichu with an arrow. The artificial sun has exploded, and the eternal night has descended. Every piece of news was like a heavy hammer that bombarded people's hearts, making it difficult for them to breathe. Regardless of whether it was the harmless elves, the domineering demonic beasts, or the city lords and nobles in the mortal cities, all of them were shocked to the extreme. How can this be? A mortal ant from the earth world is superior to our holy clan of light. Some of the die-hard followers of the holy church felt as if their parents had died. They could not accept this, and tears streamed down their faces as they gritted their teeth. Are you not convinced? Why don't you go and kill him? Jiang Taichu lives on the second sacred mountain. Someone mocked the die-hard followers. The former immediately shut up and looked as if he had eaten shit. Provoking Jiang Tian? What a joke! Not to mention that Jiang Tian's strength had already crushed the divine ancestor. Those powerhouses who had submitted to Jiang Tian were not people that they could deal with. Although the masters of the holy mountains and many experts wanted to meet Jiang Tian, or hold some sort of coronation ceremony, Jiang Tian refused and planned to enter seclusion. At this moment, many sacred lords and city lords had already handed over their heavenly materials and earthly treasures and worshipped him, calling him the grand beginning god. Jiang Tian, have you really become a god? Wang Lin asked curiously. God? How am I a god? Jiang Tian smiled and said, a divine-level civilization is even more powerful than an immortal cultivation civilization. It's already between a life form, eternal consciousness, and the laws of heaven and earth. It's immortal and indestructible, and it can create and destroy all things. They all called the sage ancestor sage emperor a true god. Wang Lin still felt that Jiang Tian was a god now, and her heart was filled with endless love and worship. Have you read the canon of the Holy See? How could you be bewitched by the Holy See? Jiang Tian looked up to the sky and laughed. Now, the so-called gods in many myths and legends, including the Holy See, aren't real gods. Calling them demigods and fake gods is just a way to elevate them. It's just a way to bewitch people. Saint Adam was called the ancestor of mankind, but in fact, he didn't create mankind. The holy race of light was actually a large race, but countless miracles that the holy race of light had performed on earth were recorded in the book of merit of the true God worshipped by the Holy See. In fact, he didn't exist at all. He was just a fictional object of worship. The Holy See said that their true God created the world and gave it light. But even the sage ancestor was thousands of miles away from the Hongmeng God who could create the world. From Jiang Tian's point of view, many of the gods with titles in the world were not true gods. They were just powerful creatures with supernatural powers. Some were even demonic beasts. Wang Lin nodded. At this time, in front of Jiang Tian, crystals as tall as mountains, herbs as tall as a man, spirit pills and spirit stones were piled up in the huge room. Especially those crystals of light, which were the secret treasures of the Holy Church. They were formed by extracting sunlight and starlight with a secret technique. They were as dazzling as diamonds and contained endless light energy. The true fire of the sun was flowing inside. If a 1-inch crystal of light was taken out and exploded, it could kill a foundation establishment overlord and seriously injure a golden core cultivator. These treasures were all given to Jiang Tian by the various sacred mountains in order to curry favor with him and help him heal his injuries. Jiang Tian was fierce and killed them until their souls left their bodies. At this time, they were taking out their coffin money just to save their lives. In addition, there were 3 spirit chi recovery seeds floating in the air. These seeds were crystal clear and had an ancient and vast energy. Dense spirit chi spread like mist. Even the priceless treasure medicines in the cultivation world couldn't compare to them. They were comparable to the recovery seeds in the stellar sky domain. After all, these 3 seeds were formed by many ancient grand cultivators during the age of the deities to compete with Star Destroyer for the spirit chi of ancient Earth. Its spirit chi was immeasurable. These 3 seeds were very precious to the divine ancestor. He had been storing them in his dantian and nourishing them with his light bloodline. He only took them out after Jiang Tian killed them. He was probably waiting for an opportunity to obtain some divine body cultivation arts and absorb the recovery seeds to rebuild his body. Unexpectedly, he was killed by Jiang Tian and burned to ashes by the true fire of the sun as soon as he was reborn. Although these seeds were very helpful for Jiang Tian's recovery and cultivation, Jiang Tian didn't want to use them. He wanted to leave them for Qing'er and his daughter. He carefully put the 3 seeds into the sky-devouring demonic gourd and engraved many divine soul restriction spells in case they were taken away. This is the biggest reward I've gotten from fighting in this world. It's as valuable as the recovery seeds of spiritual chi. With this, I can forge the 4th divine body, the fire divine body. In the end, Jiang Tian's eyes fell on a giant spherical crystal stone. He was quite pleased. This crystal stone was about 10 meters wide. It was shiny, but its surface wasn't smooth. There were many tubes like giant blood vessels on its back, which had been cut off. At the front, there were ring-shaped divine patterns that looked like growth rings. They were nested with each other, making it look like an eyeball that had just been dug out. This was the internal structure of the artificial sun. Its core array was the most important, just like the processor of a computer. In the cultivation world, it was usually called the sun jade eye or the crystal eye. It was essentially an array made of heavenly fire jade with the function of collecting and condensing starlight. As for the external components, they were much larger and had a diameter of several kilometers. They were useless to Jiang Tian, so he gave them to the others to forge artifacts and weapons. The artificial sun was embedded in the star map in the sky. The latter half of the sun was exposed outside the sky. It would erupt with a large area of runes to absorb the starlight in the sky. After being strengthened and condensed by the sun jade eye array, it would shoot into the kingdom of heaven from the front. It was because of this that the light here was more than 10 times that of an ordinary world. It was full of vitality and allowed the holy clan of light to cultivate quickly. Jiang Tian searched the surface of the sun jade eye for a while. Suddenly, his vitality burst out and he found a protruding circular pattern. His true origin gushed out and he flicked his fingers in a certain pattern. After Jiang Tian flicked and pressed a few times, the pattern was lit up by Jiang Tian's vitality and began to rotate. At the same time, the internal components of the sun were constantly changing as the array was unraveled. There was a clanging sound of metal rubbing against each other. The complex array patterns on the sun jade eye lit up continuously. The surface of the sun jade eye was dented and retracted. The sun jade eye seemed to be alive. Everyone was shocked and retreated. Their expressions changed drastically. The sun jade eye shrunk layer by layer and changed rapidly. After a while, it turned into the size of a basketball. It was as if it was cast in gold. It was unusually heavy and golden. It was dazzling and emitted an ancient aura. How could this be? Everyone at the scene was shocked and their bodies trembled. This artificial sun had an extraordinary origin. It was the creation of a world. No one expected Jiang Tian to be able to control it. Chapter 1057. For a long time, they had been trying to create a sun like this person, but they were at a loss when it came to the complicated and delicate structure of the array. It was like a primary school student facing calculus. It was completely beyond their understanding. However, Jiang Tian only casually tapped and rubbed it a few times before he controlled it. It looked simple, but that was why it was so difficult for Jiang Tian. This sun jade eye shouldn't have been made by the sky race. You belong to the giant race and you're not good at making Dharma treasures. Jiang Tian stroked his chin, revealing a look of admiration, and said, I don't know who made it. It might be from an even more powerful star race. He noticed that there was silence around him. Jiang Tian turned around and looked at Lu Huaxi, Yi, and the sacred masters. He found that they were all staring at him dumbfoundedly. Jiang Tian smiled. Can't you accept the fact that this artificial sun was made by someone else? No, it's not that. Yi stammered and said with a trembling voice, Immortal Master Jiang, you've controlled this sun jade eye. Oh, it's not complicated to control this sun jade eye. Jiang Tian was enlightened. He thought to himself, I've made a few giant suns before. The structure of those suns was thousands of times more complicated than this one, and they were as powerful as real suns. Jiang Tian had seen too many sun jade eyes like this in his previous life, and he was very familiar with them. There was a set of rules that didn't deviate from the basic principles. For others, it might be unpredictable, but for Jiang Tian, it was easy for him to find a way to break through it. Besides, this person had made the sun as an array for illumination, not an offensive Dharma artifact. It wasn't dangerous and it wasn't unbreakable. Besides, the creator had left a back door to control it so that it would be easier for others to take it. However, there was naturally no need for Jiang Tian to say this out loud. He only casually said, I'm going to absorb this sun jade eye and refine it into my dantian. I'll have a supreme divine body and a few more divine powers. It'll also help me form a divine-grade golden core and lay a solid foundation. Absorb the sun crystal eye. Create a fire tribute divine body? True Lord Jiang, don't you already have 3 divine bodies? Coupled with his fire attribute divine body. This time Yi, Lu Huaxi, and the other experts at the side were unable to restrain the shock in their hearts, and they cried out with shock. Not only could Jiang Tian control this sun jade eye, he could even refine and absorb it to forge a type of constitution. That artificial sun had shrouded a dimension for thousands of years. Countless overlords had risen while bathing in its sacred light and became famous. There were countless golden core cultivators among them. And now, the boundless holy light contained within had been absorbed by Jiang Tian's people. How powerful would the refined divine body be? On top of that, Jiang Tian also had 3 other types of divine physiques. He also had the purple lightning pupils, so how strong could Jiang Tian be after cultivating the fire element divine physique? Jiang Tian didn't even need to use the heaven-shaking bow. He could kill sacred ancestor Qi Liao with a single finger. The 3rd sacred master and the other sacred masters were shocked, but they were also complaining in their hearts. If Kong Teichu could use the sun jade eye, none of them would be able to create suns. How could they cultivate in the future? Jiang Tian also noticed that the overlords of the heavenly state looked worse than constipation. They were obviously forcing a smile. Jiang Tian was an old demon who had lived for 10,000 years. How could he not know what was going on in their minds? He smiled and said, "I'm only here because the sacred ancestor wants to destroy my foundation on earth. It has nothing to do with you. Since you're sincere, I'll let bygones be bygones. I'll also teach you the divine arts to communicate with the power of the stars and cultivate." What? When Jiang Tian's words came out, many people started to become restless. After all, Jiang Tian was so young and already so powerful. The divine arts he had must be earth-shattering. Even sacred ancestor Qi Liao wanted to have them. Just a little of it would be enough for their cultivation to increase rapidly and reach a new level. Moreover, they didn't have any deep grudges against Jiang Tian. If they could use this opportunity to befriend Jiang Tian and become his disciple, it would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Master Kong, you've already destroyed the artificial sun in the sky. Only the artificial stars are left. I'm afraid. However, the 3rd sacred master shook his head and smiled bitterly. You're wrong. What I'm teaching you is to communicate with the real stars in the universe. You can let the starlight and power of the stars enter your body to cultivate your meridians and transform your body. It's not like those artificial stars. Jiang Tian said calmly. What? Absorbing the real power of the stars? There's such a divine art in the world? Everyone was in disbelief when they heard this. It was as if they were listening to a heavenly book. Among all the cultivation techniques in the world, the most profound was not the thunder technique, nor the 5 elements technique, nor was it the evil Tao that could drive the gods and control ghosts. It was to control the power of the stars. As the saying went, the heavens were superior to the earth, the universe was above and the earth was below. The heavens were the stars, the earth was the mountains and rivers, the Qi was the earth, and the Qi was the 5 elements. No matter how powerful a deity was, how could he defeat the sun, the moon, the stars, and the vast universe? The so-called Qi Men Dun Jia was actually using the power of the stars in the universe. However, the stars were too far away from humans after all. No matter how powerful the power of the stars was, when it came to the human world, it was already very small and couldn't be felt. Cultivation arts that could directly absorb the power of the stars might not exist on the entire ancient earth. Even if they did, they would have been extinct a long time ago. That was why the ancient sages had set up the heavenly cycle star array to form a dome to gather the power of the stars and the true fire of the sun for their people to absorb. Cultivators asked about the way of heaven. The closer the divine art was to the universe, the more profound it was. As for the divine art that could absorb the power of the stars, it stood at the top and looked down on the world. If one could absorb the power of the stars, even a golden core cultivator would be crushed and a nascent soul cultivator would have to avoid it. Who wouldn't want to control such a vast power and such a powerful divine art? Just like Li Longyuan in the Tianxing domain. He only used a perfected immortal Dharma treasure like the star tree to evolve a trace of the Big Dipper and dominate an entire domain. When Jiang Tian said that he was going to teach them such a divine art, how could the many overlords not be shocked and excited? In fact, the cultivation arts of the stars were the ultimate arts for everyone. They could only look at it but couldn't get it. Some people didn't even dare to think about it. However, to Jiang Tian, it was the foundation of the real cultivation world. It could be as small as building Dharma artifacts, as big as space travel and interstellar jumps. How could it not be used? After Jiang Tian stepped into the divine realm, he even used the power of a galaxy to attack. There was no problem at all in teaching them a little bit. Even if they could absorb the power of the stars, it was only the power of the solar system. Even if they could condense light crystals or form a flawless pure light body, Jiang Tian could destroy them with his fists. This time, many overlords were moved. Even the elders of the older generation had a strange light in their eyes as they praised, "Good, good, good." Immortal Master Jiang's heart is wider than the star sea. He really deserves to be the master of the sacred hall. Immortal Master Jiang is the master of the Earth domain and the Tianxing domain. He has become the master of the three realms now. However, this is the real deal. They were endlessly grateful to Jiang Tian, flattering him like a tide. Jiang Tian taught them the stellar condensation art. It could absorb the power of the sun, the moon, and the stars. However, it was limited to the stars in the solar system to purify oneself and condense the sacred light to improve one's cultivation. Many overlords couldn't wait and immediately sat down cross-legged to cultivate. Immediately, they felt a vast amount of light energy surging into their bodies. They couldn't help but be ecstatic. Some of them even cried tears of joy and kowtowed to Jiang Tian, worshipping him and expressing their gratitude. This was Jiang Tian's strategy. Attack some of them and win over some of them. Only by using sticks and carrots could he make them submit completely. Chapter 1058. After they left happily, Jiang Tian could finally start cultivating in seclusion. Sigh, I wonder how Qinger and the child are doing now? Jiang Tian sat cross-legged in the third sacred mountain's sacred palace. His eyes were filled with longing and worry. Although he had only left for a few days and had left a seed of revival before he left, he could not help but be worried. He even had the urge to go back through the space passage now. Jiang Tian, don't worry. Sister Qinger is a good person. She will be fine. Wang Lin comforted him gently. At this time, Jiang Tian's body was injured in many places. After all, even if he had 3 divine bodies, he could only fight against golden core cultivators. He was too far away from the divine ancestor who had formed the nascent soul. At that time, if Jiang Tian didn't draw the Heaven Shaker bow at the last moment without hesitation at the cost of damaging his blood essence and lifespan, he might have died an unnatural death. Jiang Tian's injuries were very serious. If he forcefully traveled through the teleportation array now, he would be more seriously injured even if he had the protection method given by the Holy Clan of Light. New injuries would be added to old injuries, and he might die if he was not careful. Jiang Tian also understood this and nodded with a bitter smile. Even if he missed it, he could only suppress it and repair his body as soon as possible, condense the 4th divine body, and break through to the next level. Brahman is destroyed, and the master behind it, West Earth, is likely to invade Earth. Jiang Tian's eyes showed a trace of worry as he thought to himself. However, before leaving Earth, I have already passed the memories and information in Kasayapa Guru's soul to Yi Tianren and taught him how to deal with it. I believe they can handle it on their own. In the end, he cleared all distracting thoughts and began to cultivate in seclusion. However, in Heavenly Kingdom, the impact of this great change had only just begun. In fact, the divine ancestor's bloodline was the purest of the Holy Clan of Light, just like the royal family. He had many descendants, tens of thousands of them. These people were all loyal. Previously, they took advantage of the chaos to escape to various parts of Heavenly Kingdom. They hid and secretly accumulated strength to make a comeback. Kong Techu is a lowly and filthy ant from the lower realm. How could he be worthy of being our master? Some of the sacred ancestors' direct descendants were clamoring. They took the lead, fanned the flames, and used their bloodlines to incite a large number of followers. We cannot submit. We must fight to the death with Kong Techu. The dignity of the kingdom of heaven cannot be blasphemed. We want to reorganize the exiled Templars and overthrow Kong Techu's tyranny. It was unknown how many people were roaring like this, and there were even some elders who were pounding their chests and stamping their feet. Not to mention the bloodline of the Templars, any random person in the heavenly kingdom thought highly of themselves. They considered themselves to be gods and regarded Earth as a garbage dump and a cockroach nest. At this moment, they simply could not accept Jiang Tian suppressing them. But the wind gradually changed direction. The absolute beginning true God is very powerful and has 3 supreme divine bodies. He might be the reincarnation of a true God. The absolute beginning true God is kind-hearted and loves the world. This time, they were here to solve the crisis of the earth world, and also to resolve the doubts of the preaching of the Tao. He's going to teach supreme cultivation arts that can help the sacred race of light evolve. Wang Lin is lecturing on the 3rd sacred mountain. Many sacred lords and divine knights are listening and have benefited a lot. Kong Techu loves all living beings and has issued an order. From now on, the sacred race of light, the giants, the elves and the humans on earth will be equal and united. Everyone can use the power of light of the sacred hall. These news broke out one after another. Many sacred lords, city lords and other important figures expressed their opinions one after another. Under the encouragement of the sacred mountain masters who had surrendered, Jiang Tian gradually turned from an invader to a peerless overlord, a true god and a wise lord in everyone's eyes. Especially when they heard that Jiang Tian was handsome, many sacred lords became greedy for Jiang Tian and became his fanatical fans, praising his deeds. After stabilizing the situation, gather everyone. Take the heads of all the descendants of the sacred ancestors. Leave none of them alive. The sacred mountains, fallen angels and the giants immediately formed an army to execute the beheading plan. They trampled over mountains and rivers and chased after the descendants of the sacred ancestor and the sacred emperor. In a desolate mountain range at the edge of heaven. Kill. Revenge. The 3,000 titans roared, their blood boiling as they surrounded a group of sacred ancestor descendants. The descendants of the sacred ancestor were all riding noble unicorns. The leader was in his 20s, but he was arrogant. This person was none other than the 7th Saint Prince. When Jiang Tian was fighting with the sacred ancestor, Qi Liao, he had escaped and gathered his forces to plan revenge. Now that he was stopped, he wasn't afraid at all. He glared at the giants and gritted his teeth. "You old bastard! How dare you chase after me? You're asking for death. Kill him. The wrath of the giant tribe will crush you into dust. Chop him into pieces. Let's see how long he can remain arrogant. You once bathed our home in blood. Today, we'll make you pay with your blood." Yi Xiaoman didn't even need Yi to give the order. She had already charged forward with her spear. Immediately, men and women of all ages joined the battle. They roared and charged forward with an indomitable will to fight. The Holy Prince was the most vicious and ruthless of them all. He had slaughtered many giants and cities in the past. Now, he was enraged when he saw his enemy. There were figures all over the mountain range. People were shouting and beasts were roaring. The crowd was agitated. The giants waved their maces and axes and charged toward the sacred prince ferociously. A great battle broke out immediately. Many overlords died. As the saying went, a desperate army was bound to win. The giant tribe had been suppressed for too long. Now that they had Jiang Tian as their backer, they all erupted. One by one, the holy tribe of light was killed. Holy light bloomed one after another. Their bodies exploded, and broken limbs flew everywhere. Shimmering holy blood dyed the mountain range red. Legend has it that this land belonged to the giant tribe in ancient times. I don't know why the inheritance was lost. Now it seems that they are indeed very powerful. The radiant imperial family members and their loyal followers who were surrounded were terrified. Their scalps tingled as they recalled many ancient legends and re-evaluated their fighting strength. In fact, the giant tribe had the Quafu bloodline. Their individual combat power was not inferior to that of the Holy Tribe of Light. However, the Holy Tribe of Light had relied on schemes and plots to seize power and kill the Holy Tribe of Light. Boom! The millstone-like axe swung and shook thousands of soldiers. Instantly, a few Holy Tribe of Light suffered broken bones. With a swing of the mace, a head was sent flying like a baseball. The skull was sent flying, and white brain matter and red blood spurted out in the air. "Let me go! I surrender! Spare me!" At this time, the Holy Tribe of Light had no advantage in numbers or schemes. They were really killed until their souls were frozen. One by one, they began to run and beg for mercy. Woo-woo-woo! The ancient horn sounded, and the giant tribe warriors pushed forward. Every one of them had a trace of Ho Yi's blood in them. This was the bloodline that Hua Xia's ancestor had left for them. It surged and burned, and the more they fought, the stronger they became. A bunch of idiots following Kong Teichu. How long do you think he can last? When I restore my country, I will kill all of you. The seventh Saint Prince roared with blood all over his body. Originally, he wanted to kill the giant tribe and kill them all. However, now, he had no choice but to avoid the attack. The seventh Saint Prince led a group of black armor knights and paid a heavy price to kill a bloody path out of the encirclement. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, his expression changed drastically. This was because he saw a Saint Lord-level figure, the master of the third sacred mountain, appear in front of him. Chapter 1059. The seventh Saint Prince thought the sacred leader was there to save him. However, he immediately noticed that the sacred leader's eyes were sinister and he was smiling maliciously. Just as he was about to run away, he turned around and saw several more Saint Lord-level powerhouses appear behind him like ghosts. The seventh Saint Prince believed that he could escape with his life, and he even had the chance to kill Jiang Tian. After all, Jiang Tian had been severely injured in the battle with divine ancestor Qiliao. He had also used a lot of blood essence and cultivation to draw the heaven-shaking bow. He would need a few years to recover. There were still many remaining members of the Sacred Hall. If they gathered together, they might be able to make a comeback. However, he had never thought that these sacred leaders, who had received endless benefits from the Sacred Hall, would come to kill him on behalf of Jiang Tian. These sacred leaders were very powerful. They were at least late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. He was only at early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. How could he resist them? The seventh Saint Prince's face turned pale. He knelt on the ground and said with tears in his eyes, "All of you have received great help from the Sacred Hall. How can you not remember it? If you follow me to kill that demon Kong Teichu and restore the Sacred Hall, I will reward you handsomely. You will all be able to enter the Senate. If you hadn't said those words, I might have let you go. However, if you dare to be disrespectful to true God Jiang, I will cut you into pieces." Sacred leader's eyes suddenly became cold. Kong Teichu destroyed the artificial sun. This is equivalent to cutting off your resources for cultivation. How can you submit to him? The seventh Saint Prince was very angry. His eyes were filled with anxiety and fear. He stumbled backward, feeling that these people were unreasonable. The cultivation techniques of the Sacred Hall are too outdated. True God Jiang has already taught us how to absorb the real power of the stars. Another sacred Lord-level powerhouse appeared and blocked his path. True Immortal Jiang's teachings will be a blessing for all generations to come. You still want to kill him? Are you human? Another sacred Lord-level expert also appeared and laughed savagely. There were a total of 4 sacred lords, and they surrounded him. At that moment, the sacred prince was like a caged beast. He trembled in fear and despair. No matter how strong an expert was, they would still be afraid of death, and it was even to the extent that they were even more afraid of death. When facing the threat of death, he didn't have his usual arrogance, composure, and calmness. and was like a bird that was startled by the twang of a bow. "All right, everyone, let's send the Holy Prince on his way." The third Saint Master smiled coldly and took the initiative to attack. How could the seventh Saint Prince be a match for this Saint Master? This Saint Master could kill him with a single strike, yet he had only beaten him half to death. After that, the other sacred lords all attacked and killed the sacred prince. Some cut off his head, some cut off his arms and legs, and finally cut him into 8 pieces so that they could report back to Jiang Tian. This was not a simple killing, but a declaration of allegiance. Only if they killed the descendant of the sacred ancestor would Jiang Tian truly trust them. This scene was still happening in the entire heavenly state. The descendants of the sacred ancestor were wiped out by these experts, and none of them were left alive. Jiang Tian had only taught them the stellar condensation art, and he had already displayed his vast power. If they became enemies with Jiang Tian, they would end up worse than the sacred ancestor. On the other hand, submitting to Jiang Tian would bring them great benefits. Jiang Tian wouldn't care even if a few of them were left alive. They were already too weak to cause any big waves. After he received the report, he was still immersed in seclusion. However, while Jiang Tian was in seclusion, he was right. Just as he had guessed, the West Earth dimension had begun to invade Earth. At the old site of the Holy See at the Vatican. In less than a month's time, this place had already been renovated. However, on the tall lintel, there was a huge golden plaque with a few words written on it: Tianqing School, Guangming Branch. Messiah had already submitted and announced to the world that the Holy See's orthodoxy would change its doctrine and rewrite the scriptures. From now on, the only true God the Holy See believed in was the God of absolute beginning. He was one of the staunch preachers of the God of absolute beginning. Every country was shocked. This was a major event that involved the faith of more than 1 billion people around the world. At the same time, the Tianqing school's power had greatly increased. It was worthy of being the world's #1 orthodoxy. Even Kunlun's prestige was firmly suppressed. In fact, the believers around the world had different reactions. Some could not accept the collapse of their faith and chose to commit suicide. According to incomplete statistics, over 1,000 people had committed suicide in just a month. Some believers were flustered and exasperated, thinking that they had been deceived by the Holy See. There was no omnipotent true God at all. They burned scriptures, destroyed churches and monasteries, and broke out in conflicts with the clergy. However, under the guidance of Messiah, more believers had changed their faith to the God of absolute beginning. Some of them were even fanatical believers. After all, even if every country strictly guarded the existing order and the credibility of the government, it was the age of the mobile internet after all. Many videos of the battle at the Vatican had been leaked through various secret channels. In the videos, the power displayed by Jiang Tian was beyond the limits of their imagination. He flew freely and floated in the air with a giant avatar hundreds of meters tall. It could destroy the world, sweep in all directions, and kill tens of thousands of people. It was more dazzling than Hollywood special effects. If that was not a true God, what was? In fact, this had a series of effects. Many devout believers were willing to spend a lot of money to get a visa from Sidoni. Suddenly, there was another wave of immigration. Sidoni was very popular because of the Xingyuan Immortal Healing Village and the medical livestream program. Now, it was the first choice for immigrants around the world. As a result, Sidoni's population had also skyrocketed. Their economic, military, and cultural strength had risen steadily. Even many developed countries in Europe and the United States were envious. In addition to showing saint spells all day long, Messiah went around to bewitch people to believe in the God of absolute beginning, as well as changing the scriptures. Every day, she would go to the original location of the Holy Tomb to pray that Jiang Tian would win and return safely. If Jiang Tian lost, then the strong people of Heavenly Kingdom would come down and kill him. In fact, he was a little regretful. At that time, he was beaten to death by Jiang Tian. Saint Adam could not hold on. If he did not surrender, he might have been killed by Jiang Tian. The situation was compelling. However, after thinking about it, Jiang Tian was invincible on Earth. How could he be a match for the holy clan of light in Heavenly Kingdom? If Kong Techu lost, then as a traitor of Heavenly Kingdom, he would be thrown into Manga Mountain and eaten alive by those poisonous dragons that could spit fire. However, he had no other choice at this time. The Holy See, the Brahmin, and the European reclusive royalty had been beaten half to death by Jiang Tian. Moreover, under the guidance of Yingying Laozu, Huaxia's reclusive royalty had followed Jiang Tian. He was even less qualified to challenge. Resistance would only lead to death. The newly built Tianqing School's Guangming branch building was a combination of Chinese and Western architecture, or rather, it was neither fish nor fowl. From the outside, it looked like an ancient palace with red walls and green tiles, but inside, there was a dome. However, the paintings on the dome were not the stories of the Holy See, but the many deeds of Jiang Tian. For example, Jiang Tian showed off his power on Mount Everest, killed the president of the Singapore Chinese Association, Wang Chongyan, defeated the Ri Nation, and battled Miyamoto Genichi, defeated the Dark Parliament, killed the prison-suppressing demon king Yeming Yuan, the Blood Clan, and the Wolf Ancestor, and so on. In addition, there were some ancient stories in the Holy See's canon, such as the creation of the world by the absolute beginning, creating people in his own image, and setting up the Garden of Eden, and so on. Actually, these stories had nothing to do with Jiang Tian. They had nothing to do with him at all. However, history was written for the victors, and half of the history books in this world were fake. The Holy See insisted that the God of absolute beginning was the highest God, the creator of the world, the omniscient and omnipotent God. Countless years ago, he created that piece of molecular cloud and used his great magic power to cause it to collapse, resulting in the Big Bang, which then led to our current universe. Jiang Tian was the reincarnation of the absolute beginning, and the God of absolute beginning had descended to Earth. Regarding this, the Tianqing school was also very helpless. They only asked them to communicate with Tang Xiaozi and Sidoni's Archbishop Dahir when they were making up stories to avoid conflicts. Tang Xiaozi was originally a Buddhist, and he even studied it quite deeply. However, later on, he changed his faith and only believed in the God of absolute beginning. Moreover, in the aspect of confusing people, he displayed an extremely high talent. His words were like pearls, and his tongue was like a lotus flower. Now, he was the right-hand man of Sidoni's Archbishop Dahir, and there was a possibility that he would become the next archbishop. When Messiah was praying, he never expected that a chilling news had already exploded in the upper class of the world, like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. This news was even more terrifying than the invasion of the heavenly state. On the Death Hill in India, an ancient portal appeared and exploded. It was suspected that a powerhouse from the West Earth dimension had invaded Earth. Chapter 1060. However, Messiah didn't know about it yet. She just knelt in the cemetery and prayed sincerely. At this moment, the moon-worshipping wolf King Alexander was wearing an old military uniform. He walked into the main hall of the Light Branch with his hands behind his back. He looked around and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Messiah's flattery skills are top-notch. He had been seriously injured in the battle at the Lansong River. The Brahmin's great guardian had beaten him up badly. However, Jiang Tian and the Tianqing sect had been conquering the world, plundering everywhere. They didn't lack experts who could refine pills and concoct medicine either. All kinds of spirit pills and miraculous medicines were as plentiful as the sea. He had already recovered after taking the pills. Messiah, who was praying in front of the portal in the tomb, immediately rushed over to meet him. She bowed deeply and said, "Saint Alan, an old man. Greetings, Senior Alexander." The moon-worshipping wolf king panicked at being treated so courteously by the former master of the orthodoxy. He couldn't take it anymore. He quickly returned the bow and said, "Senior Messiah, I don't deserve it. How can I deserve such great respect?" The Moon Wolf King became famous after the First World War. He only became famous after the Second World War. He had once controlled the Russian Winter Army and could talk to the Russian Emperor. However, compared to Messiah, an old monster who had lived for more than 2,000 years, and the founder of the first orthodoxy in the West, he was too far away. In the Middle Ages, even the royal families of various European countries had to bow down to him. No, no, I deserve it, I deserve it. Messiah's face was full of joy. She smiled and said, Brother Alexander has been following Master Kong since the battle at the Sword Tomb Island. He has fought side by side with Master Kong several times and is deeply trusted. I hope you can put in a good word for me in front of Master Kong in the future. They were all speaking in Mandarin. Nowadays, the official language of Sidoni and Tianqing school was Mandarin. The learning of Mandarin had even started on a global scale. In Sidoni, speaking English would be despised. If you could speak some ancient Chinese and recite some poems, you would be more popular. The moon-worshipping Wolf King agreed. In the past, the moon-worshipping Wolf King did not have the qualifications to be respected by Messiah. Even the wolf ancestors are not qualified to speak with Messiah. Even Saint Augustine, Messiah's servant, is far from her. Back then, many wolf ancestors had been hunted down by the Holy See, such as Saint Augustine, like stray dogs. They either lived in the extreme cold in the extreme north or relied on the military of a large country to survive. But the past was the past, and the present was the present. In Tianqing school, although the moon-worshipping Wolf King's position was not as high as the two guardians, the disciples of the three giants, the personal disciples, and the hall masters of the artifact refining and alchemy halls, he was in charge of one of the most elite werewolves in the heavenly army. He belonged to the second echelon and was a big shot in the inner sanctum. Especially during the battle at the Lansong River, he bravely killed the enemy and was highly regarded by Jiang Tian and his wife. He even had a chance to be promoted to hall master. As for Messiah, she was far from it. According to Yi Tianren, he had yet to pass the probation period. That's easy. No problem. Although the moon-worshipping Wolf King understood that Messiah was being so respectful to him because of Jiang Tian, he was still very pleased. He puffed out his chest and laughed heartily as he accepted Messiah's bow. Suddenly, the moon-worshipping Wolf King's expression changed slightly. He pressed on the air earpiece and said, What did you say? India, the Death Hill exploded. This might be the explosion of the space-time gate and the invasion of West Earth? Invasion of West Earth? Messiah's expression changed drastically and she became uneasy. Although the Holy See and the Brahmin cooperated to deal with Jiang Tian, both sides had been wary of each other. Kasayapa Guru would not tell her a lot of information. But Messiah had lived for more than 2,000 years and was knowledgeable. She knew a lot of ancient secrets and how terrifying West Earth was. She heard that it was also a fragment of the ancient Earth and a sacred place for cultivation. There were many foundation establishment overlords and a few golden core cultivators there. Also, the overlords on Thunder Sound Mountain were extremely powerful and special. They belonged to the Gold Clan and had an extraordinary background. They were said to be indestructible and immortal. Even Heavenly World did not dare to provoke them. I'll go there right away. The moon-worshipping Wolf King's expression became unprecedentedly serious. After ending the call, he immediately said, Messiah, wait here for Immortal Master Jiang. Once he comes back, tell him immediately that the overlords of West Earth have invaded. Are they really from West Earth? Messiah was anxious. Jiang Tian was facing heavenly country, and his life and death were unknown. Now that the strong practitioners of West Earth were invading, this was a calamity that could wipe out the world. That's right. There's already a clue. The moon-worshipping Wolf King nodded solemnly. Jiang Tian had speculated that the Death Hill might be the teleport point between the Brahmin and West Earth, so they had to guard it tightly. After Jiang Tian seized the divine soul of the Kasayapa Guru, he received a lot of information and passed it on to Yi Tianren. After the battle at the Vatican, Yi Tianren immediately gathered the superpowers around the world with Chao Shixiang to share the news. Many superpowers around the world formed a special organization, the Global Defense Alliance, with the top 5 as the core. They were ready to face the possible challenges from other dimensions. After all, everyone had seen the power of the Holy See and the Brahmin overlords. As for them, they were merely the puppets of Heavenly State and West Earth, the two-dimensional worlds of Heavenly State and West Earth. Sidoni and Tianqing School sent Tang Linglong as the deputy leader of the West Earth Emergency Response Team and the deputy commander of Sidoni's Sky Army. Together with Xia, India, the United States, and the European Union, they deployed 300,000 troops to monitor the Death Hill. This was also Jiang Tian's arrangement when he went to the Heavenly World to train Tang Linglong. Now, the fluctuations in that area were getting stronger and stronger. Everyone speculated that the overlords of West Earth were about to descend. As far as I know, this kind of spatial passage can't be opened at will. Just like the passage to Heavenly World, it can only be opened once every few decades or even centuries. According to Jia Yi, it will take at least 3 years for West Earth to descend. Messiah's face was pale and nervous as she provided some information. After hearing this, the Moon Wolf King shook his head and said with a slightly stern expression, "Things are different in different times." Before the battle at the Vatican, Master had instructed us that after the Brahmin overlords were destroyed, West Earth might take action one step ahead and use a special spatial treasure to forcefully open a spatial portal. So, after the battle at the Vatican, we immediately rushed to India, which is India. I see. Messiah hesitated for a moment, then suddenly gritted her teeth and said, "Why don't the old man go and help Tianqing School?" He knew that Tianqing School had a strict promotion and incentive system, and it had always rewarded people based on their contributions. He had just submitted to Tianqing School, so he had to make some contributions to obtain Jiang Tian's approval. In addition, the portal to Heavenly World was above the Holy Tomb. If Heavenly World defeated Jiang Tian and descended to the mortal world, he would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. It would be easier for him to escape if he was further away. But you are guarding the portal here. This is also a big matter, and we can't allow the slightest mistake. This is not only my intention, but also the intention of the matriarch and the left and right guardians. Alessandra said in a serious tone, "Please tell the matriarch, Madame Zhao, and the left and right guardians that I, Messiah, will not disappoint you." Messiah bowed deeply and said with a solemn expression. The Moon Wolf King nodded. Then, they left the old site of the Holy See, boarded a military helicopter, and rushed toward the airport. This world is really going to be chaotic. Sitting in the private helicopter, the Moon Wolf King, who had been through hundreds of battles, was anxious at this moment. Cold sweat broke out on his face, as if he was facing a great enemy. He had experienced World War I and World War II, and later served as the person in charge of the Russian Winter Soldiers, the chief instructor, and suppressed many powerful organizations in Russia. He could be said to be an experienced and knowledgeable person. But even World War I and World War II were only wars of human civilization, wars of nations, and wars of class and ideology. But this time, it was a war between Earth and the dimensional world, a war between two completely different civilization systems. Chapter 1061. India. The old site of the Death Hill. The Death Hill was the historical site of Mohenjo-daro in India. It meant Death Valley in Indian. It covered an area of about 9 square kilometers. Most of the buildings were made of granite, but they had already become ruins, leaving only the foundation. However, through the remnants of the foundation, it could be seen that the original city was scattered all over the place. It was convenient for transportation, and the planning was reasonable. It was completely comparable to a modern city. It's quite a lineup. When the moon-worshipping Wolf King arrived at this place on a transport plane, his pupils constricted as he was secretly shocked. Countless military vehicles formed a dragon-like convoy. Tanks were like a rolling torrent of steel, pushing toward this place. The army and air force from the world's major countries had set up camp, set up defense lines, built bunkers, trenches, fortresses, and all kinds of defensive structures. In the sky, fighter jets roared, and transport planes rose and fell. They came and went very frequently. Countless soldiers walked out of the transport planes and vehicles and formed a deep and majestic defense line 30 kilometers around the Death Hill. If one looked carefully, they would find that the soldiers who entered this place were all wearing anti-radiation suits and gas masks. In addition, this place was desolate and there were few plants. It suddenly gave people a feeling of doomsday, as if a disaster had occurred. This place is a mysterious place. It's not inferior to the Tunguska explosion. The moon-worshipping Wolf King muttered to himself, and his expression gradually became serious. Here, the inspectors found evidence that many violent explosions had occurred here. All the buildings within a 1-kilometer radius of the center of the explosion were reduced to powder. Many skeletons were found further away from the center. From the way the skeletons were placed, it could be seen that the disaster of death had suddenly descended, and no one had noticed it. These skeletons strangely contained radiation content that was comparable to the radiation content of the victims of the nuclear attacks in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, even after more than 3,000 years. Not only that, the researchers were surprised to find that the rubble field after the ancient city burned looked very much like Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atomic bomb explosion. There were still traces of shock waves and nuclear radiation left on the ground. Moreover, even after more than 3,600 years, the current radiation level could still kill people. Therefore, the soldiers had to wear all kinds of anti-radiation equipment. The moon-worshipping Wolf King was the person in charge of Sidoni's special werewolf squad. His military rank wasn't low at all, so someone immediately came to greet him. After putting on the anti-radiation suit, the moon-worshipping Wolf King arrived at the edge of the Death Hill under the lead of a guard from the Earth Defense Alliance. However, he discovered that many elites from Tianqing School had already arrived, and there was no lack of political figures among them. There were even generals and high-ranking officials in the Ministry of Defense and the military of various countries who had a few stars on their shoulders. Commander-in-Chief Tang, this is the super defensive line that we have prepared for the powerhouses from the heavenly state world that are about to descend. The United Nations Army formed by the 5 permanent members, Sidoni's Sky Army, and the Indian Native Army, a total of 100,000 troops have gathered here. General of the U.S. Pentagon, Keynes, stood at the edge of the Death Hill in a radiation suit and reported to Tang Linglong. So far, we have built 10 missile interceptor positions, equipped with the most advanced Immortal Slayer weapons, as well as laser cannons and armor-piercing missiles. As long as the headquarters gives the order, we will raze this place to the ground. The threat of modern weapons to the Foundation establishment powerhouses had been greatly reduced. However, with 100,000 troops and modern weapons of mass destruction, the odds of victory were very high. Moreover, there were also various super forces such as the Universe Shield, Blue Storm, Winter Soldier, and the Huaxiaolong Formation. Tang Linglong, who was dressed in a military uniform, had a slightly stern expression. She said in a deep voice, "But my master said that the West Earth world is even more powerful than the Heavenly State world, and there are Golden Core powerhouses there. And Golden Core powerhouses are probably able to fight against nuclear weapons. I suggest that the Kuelian enter the Indian territory, or enter the Indian Ocean with Kuelian battleships and aircraft carriers." Next to her, a general from the Indian Ministry of Defense was furious. He said resolutely, "We have already made a big concession by allowing the Earth Defense Alliance to enter. But we will never allow such evil weapons like the Kuelian to enter. How can there be a space-time gate here? How can our country be connected to another world? This is slander." Although many major countries in the world had purchased the Kuelian system, India did not. Once they entered, it would be equivalent to the other party placing a weapon even more terrifying than nuclear weapons in their country. How could he agree to that? Keynes shouted angrily, "Your Excellency, you better understand the current situation. Right now, Sidoni and the 5 permanent members are helping India. Once the heavenly state world invades, the first to suffer will be you. Then we can only use the Kuelian of Sidoni and Huaxia to attack from a distance. After all, the Kuelian of these 2 countries are the closest to each other." Tang Linglong held the binoculars and looked at the ruins of the Death Hill in the distance. Her expression was solemn. Next to her, the Indian general jumped up in exasperation, but Keynes pulled him aside and threatened him. After obtaining the information of many mysterious places in the world from the Pentagon, Jiang Tian asked the intelligence department of Tianqing School and Huaxia to conduct a deeper level of excavation and investigation. The information that Tang Linglong currently had made her feel very uneasy, and it also added to her confusion. It could even be said that the more she knew, the more confused she was. There were a large number of melted clay and mineral fragments in the ruins. Experiments conducted by the laboratories of Sidoni Academy of Science and Huaxia Academy of Science showed that they were melted at a temperature as high as 14,000 degrees Celsius to 15,000 degrees Celsius. Under the production conditions at that time, such a high temperature could only be formed in the forging furnace of the smelting workshop, and a large number of melted clay and mineral fragments could never be formed in a small number of forging furnaces. Scientists also found many traces of explosions in the city of Mohenjo-daro. The buildings in the center of the explosion area were razed to the ground. From the center outwards, the farther the distance, the smaller the degree of destruction, and the buildings in the outermost area were almost intact. This was very similar to the scene after an atomic bomb explosion. In addition, in the ancient Sanskrit narrative poem Mahabharata, there was a description of this place. It was as if the power of nature burst out all at once. The sun was spinning. The heat of the weapons set the earth ablaze. The elephants were burned by the fire and ran wildly, trying to escape this terrible disaster. The river boiled, hundreds of animals died, the enemy fell one by one, the corpses were scattered. Horses and chariots were burned, and the whole battlefield was a scene of fire. The sea was dead silent. The wind blew, and the earth lit up. It was a really creepy scene. The bodies of the dead were burned by the terrible fire, and their limbs were no longer intact. We have never seen or heard of such a weapon. This terrible scene made many people associate this weapon with a nuclear bomb. Some people even thought that Mohenjo-daro was destroyed by aliens. At present, the theory that scientists most agreed with was the lightning destruction theory, that it was the mysterious black lightning that destroyed Mohenjo-daro. Black lightning evolved from a rare ball of lightning. Under normal circumstances, they were small in size and very low in brightness, like a cloud of black fog, but they contained a lot of energy and were not afraid of ordinary lightning protection facilities. But when they gathered together, they could emit poisonous gas, and they were particularly prone to explosion. As long as one black lightning exploded, it could cause a series of explosions, instantly producing a high temperature of 15,000 degrees Celsius. The damage caused by this kind of explosion was similar to that of Mohenjo-daro, and the unearthed relics of Mohenjo-daro showed that they had been exposed to high temperatures of 14,000 to 15,000 degrees Celsius. But now, the message Jiang Tian sent to everyone made her feel a trace of fear in her heart. According to Jiang Tian, on the Death Hill, the explosion more than 3,000 years ago was not caused by nature, but by man. It was only caused by the powerhouses of Thunder Mountain in the West Earth who came here and formed a lightning portal. Chapter 1062. West Earth, Thunder Mountain. He had a strong physical body and was best at thunder techniques. The lethality of such lightning was comparable to that of a nuclear weapon. Only the Kuo-Yan's long-range attacks could surpass his lethality. In close-range attacks, he was invincible and could destroy everything. Even the thunder technique master, Zhang Qianlei, might not be able to withstand it. Keynes scolded the Indian admiral and threatened him. Finally, he forced him to agree that the Taichu aircraft carrier could enter the Indian Ocean with a medium-sized Kuo-Yan. Then he ran over to report and asked for credit. "Commander Tang, when will Immortal Master Jiang come back? He promised to make me the Secretary of Defense of the United States, but it hasn't happened yet." The secret of the Death Hill ruins was provided to Immortal Master Jiang. "I can be considered to have done something. When Master comes back, I will naturally report to him." Tang Linglong was helpless. Keynes looked mighty and domineering. He was the general of the largest country in the world, but he was also a fan of politics. "Guardian Yi, do you think something will happen to Sect Master? He has been in the heavenly state for 2 months." At the mention of Jiang Tian, Sasaki Haisha's handsome face became serious as she asked with concern. He won't. Yi Tianren's white robe fluttered in the wind like an immortal. He said confidently, when Immortal Master Jiang dominated the star dimension, no one thought he would win. But he still won. Although Master is at the Foundation Establishment realm, he tried to break through to the Golden Core realm several times and then suppressed it forcefully. He is actually equivalent to a Golden Core realm expert. And he is far stronger than ordinary Golden Cores. Golden Core Master once said that only when one is at the Qi Refinement realm and Foundation Establishment realm, one can form a Golden Core with the highest probability. The higher the quality of the Golden Core, the better. Do you have any opinions on this? Sasaki Haisha gradually relaxed and immediately asked Yi Tianren for advice. The Tianqing school's disciples never hid anything. Yi Tianren naturally told her everything and gave her a lot of advice. Yi Tianren's knowledge and experience were extraordinary. During the trip to the Stellar Sky domain, he had also received careful guidance from Jiang Tian. Many of Sasaki Kaisha's problems were solved. She was enlightened and benefited a lot. This was the magnanimity of Tianqing school. Yi Tianren would not only give guidance to his fellow disciples, but he would also give guidance to all the powerhouses who were on good terms with Tianqing school. He would educate everyone regardless of their background. He and the Wolf King had even discussed how to use the power of the stars and moonlight. On the other hand, Tang Linglong snorted coldly and sneered, "Of course Master is fine." It was that Huang Linger. Was she crazy? Why did she insist on following him? Didn't her master travel through space to protect her? She's only in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. What can she do to help? Yi Tianren smiled bitterly and did not reply. He knew that Jiang Tian's female disciples had complicated feelings for Jiang Tian, but Jiang Tian did not have the time to care about these things. They also knew that Jiang Tian would not have feelings for them. They could only hide their improper thoughts in the bottom of their hearts and did not dare to reveal it to Jiang Tian. However, it was inevitable for them to be jealous of each other. Fortunately, Tianqing school's rules were very strict. No matter how much they fought on normal days, once they were on the battlefield, they cooperated well and killed the enemy bravely. Therefore, these things were not a big deal. No matter what, Ling is doing it for Master's sake. That's the heavenly kingdom. Do you have the guts? Sasaki Kaisha retorted sarcastically. What are you shouting for? You're just jealous because Huang Linger and Master have a relationship. Tang Linglong smiled faintly and said, Master said clearly that he doesn't need us to follow him. Don't you understand that? Do you think Master's words are a joke? Don't use Master to pressure me. You're not qualified to represent Master. Put away your infatuated dreams. Master only treats you as a disciple. Sasaki Kaisha was speechless for a moment, but she sneered a few times, looking very disdainful. What do you mean? Tang Linglong's pretty face sank and she said coldly, Not convinced? If you're not convinced, then let's fight. I'll let you know what it means to be a senior sister. You think I'm afraid of you? Sasaki Kaisha and Huang Linger had a close relationship, but it was not the same for Tang Linglong. Because the conflict between Jiang Tian and the Sakura Association was caused by Tang Linglong going to Donghai. Previously, when Jiang Tian was trapped in the Sword Tomb Island, Tang Linglong went to Tianqing school to complain that Zhao Xueqing and everyone else did not rescue Jiang Tian, and she fought with Sasaki Kaisha. After that, Tang Linglong had been suppressing the power of the Sakura Association in Tianqing school, so Sasaki Kaisha was very displeased with her. Hearing this, Yi Tianren frowned and said coldly, The enemy is right in front of us. Don't act recklessly. Everyone listened to the words of the senior brother and the left protector. Tang Linglong and Sasaki Kaisha looked at each other angrily, their eyes clearly saying that they would have a good fight after this battle was over. There's a change? A trace of seriousness appeared on Tang Linglong's face as she looked at the sky in the distance. It was clear that there were no clouds in the sky, but streaks of lightning as thick as an arm began to burst out. They were of different lengths, with the longest being 100 meters long. They were even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. It looked terrifying. The radiation is strong. The report of the military scientist in front of them rang out in their earphones. It was accompanied by a grating noise that made their eardrums very uncomfortable. It's beyond conventional nuclear radiation. Twice the conventional nuclear radiation. It's still rising. We can't take it anymore. The ray detector is malfunctioning. Please retreat. The gate of heaven is shaking violently. Someone is using a secret treasure to forcibly break through the space. Tang Linglong ordered them to retreat. Many of the generals present looked solemn. According to Master, the secret treasure of space is a supreme-grade spirit treasure that only golden core cultivators can own and use. It is very rare in all the major dimensions. This time, the person who is coming is not to be trifled with. Yi Dunren narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice. After Jiang Tian obtained the soul of the Brahmin Kasyapa Guru, he used the soul devourer to search for information about him and immediately sent it to Yi Tianren with his immortal will. Yi Tianren only learned about it then. Kasyapa Guru was actually a guardian of the ageless sect in West Earth. More than 2,000 years ago, he went to the mortal world and used some of the secret arts of the ageless sect to establish the Brahmin sect. The ageless sect was second only to the top forces in West Earth, such as Thunder Mountain, Tingyu Tower and Tianhuang Pavilion. Kasyapa Guru was also responsible for expanding the influence and sphere of influence of the Brahmin before the spirit chi recovered. He was fully prepared for the arrival of the overlords of West Earth and the fight for control of Earth. In fact, he was doing a good job. Although the Brahmin didn't have as many believers as the Holy See, they also had many powerful overlords and had successfully infiltrated the political leaders, rich people, scientists, scholars, opinion leaders, and so on. The cultivation method of the ascetic abstinence precepts to prolong one's life, especially the secret method of reincarnation, had a fatal temptation. Some people wanted to reincarnate and live forever, while others didn't want their loved ones to leave and tried to resurrect them. They all became their believers. Moreover, the Brahmin could do it. They had a set of effective techniques and many successful precedents. They had already gained a lot of support and believers. Even the high-level officials in Washington and Huaxia were his believers. In fact, after an investigation they found out. Jiang Tian and the Tianqing school were once in danger. Because the high-level officials of a country among the believers of Kasyapa once wanted to use nuclear weapons against Jiang Tian and the Tianqing school. However, the Coelian defense system greatly reduced the possibility of nuclear weapons being effective. In the end, this proposal was left unsettled. And when Jiang Tian took action against the Holy See this time, he used only 1 day and 1 night to destroy the Holy See and the Brahmin. These believers were afraid of Jiang Tian's power and didn't dare to act rashly. In short, the Holy See took advantage of the middle and lower class people's desire for redemption and walked the path of the lower class. The Brahmin walked the path of the elite and targeted the high-level officials. At the same time, they kept a low profile and were rarely known. But in terms of actual influence, the Brahmin even surpassed the Holy See. Now, Jiang Tian had smashed the plan of the heavenly world for more than 2,000 years and wiped out the Brahmin. How could the people of West Earth tolerate it? This was an unprecedented loss and provocation to them that they couldn't bear. This time, the West Earth world would definitely send out super powerful overlords. They would even use their spirit treasures to split open the space crystal wall and take revenge on Earth. This challenge was unprecedented and would never be repeated. In the sky above the ruins of the Death Hill, the lightning that was flashing randomly in the sky gradually became relatively stable. And it formed a giant gate with a radius of 100 feet. On it, the lightning intertwined into many runes as if it led to another world. In the lightning and thunder gate, the energy waves became more and more intense. It shook rapidly, as if something was going to break through the void and come through. Everyone looked solemn and uneasy, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Once he appears, ask him to retreat immediately. If he doesn't, kill him immediately. Tang Linglong saw this and shouted viciously. Yes. Around her, the senior generals of various countries, including Canes, shouted with firm eyes. In an instant, a murderous aura filled the sky above the Death Hill. The battlefield within 30 miles was solemn and all the soldiers were extremely nervous. Chapter 1063. West Earth was about to descend. When this news spread to the outside world, immediately, whether it was the Tianqing sect, the various powerful organizations, or the various large countries in the world, they were all shocked. Previously, there were rumors that powerful people from Star World would descend. However, no one witnessed it, and the news only spread in a small area. Even if they heard about it, they didn't take it to heart. Just like the legends of the Loch Ness Monster and flying saucers, they treated them as non-existent. However, it was different this time. After Jiang Tian entered the Heavenly Kingdom through the Vatican, Yi Tianren had already communicated the information he obtained from Jiang Tian with various powerful organizations and national defense departments. West Earth was rumored to be a dimensional world from ancient Tianzhu to outer space. Its strength might be comparable to or even surpass the stellar sky domain. However, no one knew who would come and how many would come. However, everyone knew that this was the first large-scale contact between humans and the dimensional world. A world-shaking war might even break out. This war might affect the direction of the entire world. Why isn't Jiang Tian back yet? In Tianqing school, Zhang Wanqing's expression was solemn and full of worry. Nothing will happen. Tian is blessed by the heavens. He will be fine. Jiang Zhixing comforted her. Ling that little girl, also went with him. What a fool. Zhang Wanqing's heart ached and she was worried. Now that Qing'er was pregnant and Jiang Tian's attitude was firm, she gave up on the thought in her heart. However, Ling was filial and not as cold as Qing'er. Zhang Wanqing treated her like her own daughter. Yi Ziwei, Jiang Bangxia, and the others were also distracted. They were very worried about Jiang Tian. As for Qing'er, everyone deliberately hid it from her. She didn't know that she was in a coma all day and was tired. It was precisely because she couldn't fight now that they didn't need to tell her. It would only make her worry. They only said that Jiang Tian was in seclusion in Europe for a while. Sigh, why isn't Immortal Master Jiang back yet? Countless Wuxia martial artists were nervous. His heart clenched. Kong Teichu, I'm afraid he has already fallen in the kingdom of heaven, right? For a mere mortal to provoke a true god, he's truly seeking death. Now that West Earth is about to descend upon the mortal world again, I'd like to see how Tianqing school can resist. We'll definitely be wiped out. Leave no one alive. However, countless enemies of Jiang Tian, including the Brahmin and Holy See fanatics, as well as the diehards of the European Union, Japan, and the United States who had been suppressed by Jiang Tian, were gloating. At this moment, the underground forums of the darknet world were once again in an uproar. Countless people were paying close attention to this battle. Many large countries and experts had already begun to research the dimensional worlds. They knew that they were once immigrants from ancient Earth, but after a long period of time, they had formed a cultivation civilization and considered themselves to be high-level life forms. They probably didn't even consider humans as humans. For a time, India's Hill of Death became the focus of the world. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, several days passed, and Jiang Tian and Huang Linger still hadn't returned. The vibration of the lightning portal became more and more intense. The lightning that was supposed to be a flash of lightning lasted for a long time and became more and more solid. For a time, the entire world was shrouded in this huge shadow. The local soccer world was surging. Countless people were looking forward to Jiang Tian's return. In the kingdom of heaven's secret realm, the palace on the third sacred mountain, Jiang Tian had already repaired his physical body and recovered his cultivation. He had also begun to condense a fire elemental constitution. The great herbs and spirit stones here are really extraordinary. They contain fire elemental energy and endless light. They are of great help to my physical body repair. The light in Jiang Tian's eyes flickered, and a trace of joy appeared at the corner of his mouth. These days, he had crazily devoured many great herbs and used them to set up a super-large spirit gathering formation. He condensed endless light to reconstruct the gunmetal divine body and quickly repaired it. Dazzling golden light appeared on the surface of Jiang Tian's body. At this time, his constitution had an additional trace of light elemental energy. It was in a magnificent translucent state like gold. One could even see the many bones and organs in his body that were originally broken. At this moment, they were gradually growing. In fact, it only took a few days for Jiang Tian to completely recover. His gunmetal divine body had also been strengthened a little and even showed signs of reaching perfection. The gunmetal divine body was his first divine body. It was also the foundation of the other two divine bodies. With a stable foundation, the other two divine bodies would also quickly enter the realm of great success. Even if Jiang Tian hadn't broken through in his cultivation, the level of the three divine bodies had been improved and strengthened. His combat power was also 10 times stronger than before. I don't know how Qinger and Gluttonous Baby are doing. I have to transform them into fire elemental constitutions as soon as possible. I don't know which one to use. At this time, he had fully recovered. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed a trace of tenderness and longing, and gradually became firm. The sun jade eye was too special. It was made of a strange multicolored crystal that contained light. This crystal was called the heavenly fire jade. It was very rare even in the universe. Jiang Tian couldn't guarantee how long it would take for him to get a second one. It might take 10 years, 100 years, or even never get a second one. Jiang Tian had to condense a fire elemental divine body in one go. There couldn't be the slightest mistake. Therefore, in addition to using the sun jade eye, he also needed the light of the other stars on the sky dome star map. The sky dome star map was a natural array formation that gathered the light from the sky and attracted the fire from the stars. It had existed for countless years. It might have even existed before Hou-Yi. The brilliance and fire energy it contained were simply incomparably vast. With the addition of the sky dome star map, the probability of Jiang Tian successfully condensing a fire elemental divine body greatly increased. Now that I have all the resources, I still need to think carefully about what kind of divine body to condense. The first thing Jiang Tian thought of was the Great Sun Immortal Body, one of the 5 elements immortal bodies. This was also one of the strongest 12 immortal bodies in the universe. In history, in the central galaxy of the universe, there were a few experts who used this body to become immortal emperors. They made a name for themselves and dominated the cultivation world. It's still too wasteful to use the sun crystal eye to condense the great sun immortal body. But in the end, Jiang Tian still shook his head. Jiang Tian's gunmetal divine body might be called a divine body, but it was still an immortal body of the 5 elements. It only had a certain probability of surpassing the immortal emperor and ascending to the immortal realm. It wasn't that Jiang Tian didn't want to directly condense a metal elemental divine body. It was just that at that time, the cultivation resources on Earth were too scarce. Jiang Tian was already very lucky to have found the metal and wood spirit cores in the star continent. He didn't dare to ask for too much. He immediately used them as resources to condense the gunmetal divine body. The 2 divine bodies that Jiang Tian condensed in the stellar sky domain, the Xianxia green dragon and the whirling green wood, were the real supreme divine bodies. They were far superior to ordinary immortal bodies, saint bodies, and so on. Only when all the divine bodies were present could a divine-grade golden core be nurtured. And a divine-grade golden core could lay a solid foundation for Jiang Tian's future cultivation. His combat power was unparalleled, and he could easily kill experts of the same cultivation level at any level. In the end, it could even support Jiang Tian to surpass the immortal realm and successfully ascend to the immortal realm. He could control time and establish the supreme realm of Hongmeng. In fact, when Jiang Tian condensed the whirling green wood divine body and planned to convert the wood elemental divine body to the fire elemental divine body, he had thought about it carefully. At that time, his best choice was this kind of divine body. But he didn't expect to come to the heavenly state with a dome, a star map, and an artificial sun. Jiang Tian now had the sun jade eye and the support of the star map. It would be a waste for him to cultivate such a cultivation art. Moreover, the so-called Great Sun Divine Body could only simulate the true fire of the sun and the intent of the sun in the sky. It was powerful enough but not flexible enough. Besides, it was very similar to the sky-swallowing fiend art and the Great Sun Furnace that Jiang Tian cultivated. It was unnecessary. It must be a real divine body. The shining golden crow divine body? An ancient deity emperor used to cultivate this cultivation art. But I studied it carefully in my previous life. It must be at the soul formation level and have a solid foundation to travel across the sky and collect the true fire of the sun. It's too demanding. Jiang Tian thought for a while and shook his head again. This divine body was very powerful. But it had high requirements for Jiang Tian's level, which conflicted with his plan to condense a divine-grade golden core and the chaotic divine body. He had to use a fire elemental divine body to lay a foundation and continue to transform other divine bodies at the foundation establishment level. Then he would form the chaotic divine body and condense a divine-grade golden core. He couldn't wait. In the end, a glint of sharpness flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes and he heaved a sigh. Looks like I can only cultivate the bright vermilion bird divine body, which is slightly weaker than the shining golden crow divine body but doesn't have high requirements for true essence. The vermilion bird. After the rise of Taoism on Earth, it was one of the 7 constellations and one of the 4 symbols. It was one of the 7 constellations in the south of the 28 constellations. It belonged to the fire element and was red in color. It was also known as the vermilion bird. There were also records like the vermilion bird of the south, the leader of all birds. It's Dantian meridian 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 meridian. In fact, the vermilion bird was not only a mythical beast in myths and legends, nor was it a figment of worship. It was even a top-notch mythical beast in the universe. It was as famous as the true dragon, the golden crow, and the heavenly phoenix. Legend had it that the top vermilion bird was comparable to a Dao reunion overlord. Its energy could crush a golden core and kill a foundation establishment overlord. Legend had it that the famous bright vermilion bird divine body was created by a beast with the blood of the vermilion bird when it turned into a human form. This divine body was also a kind of cultivation art. When cultivated to the extreme, it could spew out fire and light to create the vermilion bird dharma form. It was one of the most powerful divine bodies. It's been 5 years since I was reborn. I can finally be extravagant. This sun jade eye is probably tens of thousands of years old. I'll use it to refine this divine body. Jiang Tian touched the sun jade eye and exclaimed. His eyes were glittering with determination. Chapter 1064. There were too few cultivation resources on Earth. Even someone as talented as Heavenly Yi could only reach the 2nd level of the foundation establishment level and could not advance any further. He was only able to see the truth of the 3rd level of the foundation establishment level when he used the unity of heaven and man technique. If Jiang Tian hadn't discovered the existence of the dimensional world, he wouldn't have been able to reach the golden core level in 10 or 20 years, let alone a divine-grade golden core. Form. Qing'er's pale face appeared in Jiang Tian's mind. Anxiety and worry flashed in his eyes. With a low shout, his fingers rapidly formed a seal, activating a secret technique. Creation of everything, essence of heaven and earth. Crack crack. The basketball-sized sun jade eye quickly shrank and became the size of a pigeon egg. Swallow! Jiang Tian uttered a groan as he opened his mouth and swallowed the sun crystal eye. If it were before, Jiang Tian would have melted it outside his body with the great sun furnace and slowly absorbed it into his dantian with the chaotic art. But this time, Jiang Tian swallowed it directly. There was only one reason. Because Jiang Tian's body was so strong that he could bear it. Besides, the eruption of the sun true fire was also a process of tempering his body, which could stabilize the foundation of his 3 divine bodies. Boom! A surge of energy burst out in Jiang Tian's body, making his energy rise endlessly. This sun crystal eye contains many arrays and divine runes to absorb and release fire energy and light, but it doesn't belong to me. I need to destroy the arrays and divine runes so that the fire energy can be released and completely absorb it. Then I'll form a small true fire sun and build a divine body that belongs to me. Jiang Tian thought as he activated his secret art. Suddenly, in his dantian, the mystic water flowed and the divine runes on the sun jade eye were removed bit by bit. As the divine runes were removed, the fire energy of the light burst out even more crazily, as if it were going to completely melt his dantian. At this moment, it could be seen. From Jiang Tian's dantian, rays of dazzling light shot out of his body like sharp swords. Under the dazzling light, Jiang Tian's internal organs, bones, meridians, and blood vessels were all clearly visible. In his dantian, the sun jade eye was burning crazily. It was the purest true fire of the sun. One wisp of it was enough to burn a foundation establishment expert into ashes. Endless light and fire energy flooded Jiang Tian's limbs, bones, and internal organs. An unbearable pain came. Even though Jiang Tian had 3 god bodies and his soul consciousness was as solid as a rock, he couldn't bear it anymore. He grunted in pain. However, Jiang Tian did not resist at all. He only clenched his teeth and persevered. He let the flames and light cleanse the 3 divine bodies. This process lasted for an entire day and night. Finally, at a crucial point, Jiang Tian opened his eyes and snorted, "Refine! Rumble!" The 9 transformations mystic art was activated. Jiang Tian began to crazily devour the pure energy emitted by the sun jade eye. The true essence in his body kept increasing. At this time, Jiang Tian's true essence gradually had the property of fire. It carried a dazzling light and contained a lot of energy. It was unknown how many years this sun jade eye had existed on the star atlas in the dome for. It had absorbed endless light and was contained within it. Jiang Tian guessed. Maybe the sky race wanted to travel across the solar system and enter the dark and lonely universe, so they used this person to create a sun that emitted light and maintained a stable ecosystem. Therefore, the energy of the fire class contained in the sun crystal camera was almost inexhaustible, and it was even more effective than the cosmic fire. 3 days later, Jiang Tian swallowed all the true fire energy in the sun jade eye. The fire energy in his body had reached an unbelievable level. But he didn't stop there. He started to absorb the light and true fire energy of the artificial stars on the star atlas. An extremely vast amount of fire energy was poured into the palace where Jiang Tian was. This time, half of Heavenly Kingdom felt the earth-shattering change. Countless people were dumbfounded. They looked up and their eyes twitched violently. The palace where Jiang Tian was in seclusion had a mysterious connection with the star atlas in the sky. Then, endless light and true fire energy fell from the sky and turned into a pillar of light. A torrent of flames surged toward the palace and enveloped Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian was crazily absorbing the endless energy of light and true fire like a whale swallowing a cow. He was pulling the star map in the sky so hard that a giant funnel that was dozens of square kilometers in diameter appeared, as if it was about to collapse. This is too scary. Is the star atlas in the sky collapsing? Everyone in the Heavenly Kingdom saw this scene. Whether it was the peerless experts in the Sacred Mountain Province or the peddlers in the mortal cities, they were all shaken to the core. Oh God! Is perfected immortal Jiang about to break through? On the 3rd sacred mountain, Lu Huaxi looked at Qin Fan with admiration. At this moment, the curse on his body had already been removed by Jiang Tian. However, because he had killed too many people before, his demonic aura still remained. This is simply the power to destroy the heavens and earth. I wonder what level perfected immortal Jiang has reached. Everyone was shocked and envious. At this moment, they all felt a powerful aura, which was not inferior to that of the revived divine ancestor. It was as if it could destroy the world. A few days later, the true essence in Jiang Tian's body had reached an unimaginable level. It was at least 10 times or even 100 times more than before. Jiang Tian had a very obvious feeling of exploding. his entire body also had an inexhaustible amount of strength, as if he could move mountains and fill seas, to the extent that Jiang Tian felt like he was going to explode and die. The true essence in my body is enough to form 4 mid-grade golden cores. Jiang Tian's expression became slightly stern, and he sighed in relief. There is too much Sun true essence fire in the heaven fire jade. If someone else swallowed the Sun jade eye directly, even a deity body wouldn't be able to withstand it. But I already have 3 divine bodies that can store and withstand the vast true essence. It's unimaginable. Jiang Tian's 3 divine bodies were very magical, and the 9 changes mysterious art was the most powerful cultivation art in the universe. Just like how ink could exist in clear water, and gas and liquid could enter solid containers, the 3 god bodies and the mortal body could be intertwined with each other. They could be separated or combined, and they could move side by side. Although they existed in Jiang Tian's body, Jiang Tian and the mortal body were equal to having 4 bodies, which was why they could withstand the true essence that other cultivators didn't even dare to think about. Even if Jiang Tian didn't transform into the bright vermilion bird divine body, he could kill a late-stage golden core overlord or even a late-stage golden core cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator. If Jiang Tian were to meet a sacred ancestor again, he wouldn't need to use any heaven-shaking bow or sun-shooting arrows, nor would he need to use any cultivation technique or divine ability. He would be able to crush the sacred ancestor into meat paste with just a wave of his hand. This was the result of the skyrocketing true essence and the powerful cultivation. One force could break 10,000 spells and shake everything. The true essence of the fire element is enough. The first step is to condense it and make the bright vermilion bird. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold. In the transcending divine 9 transformations mysterious technique, the method to build the divine body began to operate. Crackle. Jiang Tian's dantian trembled. Gradually, balls of fire rose. The vast plains formed by the heptagold metal blocks, the lofty mountains and the surging Blackwater Lake were all on fire. This was especially true for the gigantic swaying greenwood. Raging flames soared into the sky and crackled as they burned. But every time it burned the main trunk, the heptagold metal and Blackwater true essence would immediately produce greenwood, so the divine wood couldn't be burned at all. It wasn't a simple burning. Under the control of Jiang Tian's 9 changes mysterious art, the wood true essence was systematically transformed into the bright vermilion bird true essence. The flames in the sky didn't dissipate. Instead, they gradually condensed into a ball of fire and it became bigger and bigger. It shone for thousands of miles, like a sun in the sky. Open! When almost all the true essence in his body had been transformed into the bright vermilion bird true essence, Jiang Tian let out a roar. Chapter 1065. Boom! The giant sun in Jiang Tian's dantian suddenly collapsed into specks of light. They shone brightly and rushed out of Jiang Tian's body. At this time, Jiang Tian was like a man made of fire. His body was surrounded by dazzling light. A ray of light pierced the sky and a ray of light could crush a mountain. Then, those light spots formed a bright vermilion bird in the sky behind Jiang Tian. Its giant wings covered the sky and emitted strong light and fire energy. An ancient and boundless aura filled the entire hall. Even the palace couldn't withstand it. Many array inscriptions on it cracked and melted. In the end, countless shield-shaped array discs were activated to protect the palace from damage. Only then did they block the violent energy emitted by Jiang Tian. The vermilion bird. It was a powerful divine beast in the universe. The ancient people of Wuxia even used it to refer to the southern constellation, which showed how extraordinary it was. Form. At this time, the divine body of the light vermilion bird had been formed, but Jiang Tian didn't stop. Instead, he activated the divine 9 changes mystic art again. The entire light vermilion bird suddenly turned into a beam of light and shot into Jiang Tian's dantian. The mark of the vermilion bird was imprinted on Jiang Tian's limbs, every bone, every vein, every acupoint, every nerve endings and every cell. At this moment, if one were to look at Jiang Tian with a device that surpassed technology, they would find that Jiang Tian's entire body was made up of bright light spots. These light spots formed a vermilion bird that was about to take flight. It was not just his body. Jiang Tian himself also soared into the air, assuming the posture of an eagle soaring into the sky, hovering in the air. He floated in the air without using any Dharma power, as if he had turned into a vermilion bird that could freely roam the universe. The shadow of the vermilion bird in the air also became bigger and rose higher and higher. In the end, it surpassed this palace and appeared in the sky above the first sacred mountain. It spanned hundreds of miles and suppressed the entire heavenly kingdom. Everyone could see the huge, illusory figure of the vermilion bird. It spewed out true flames. Raging flames curled about, sweeping across the sky. The terrifying pressure made everyone in heavenly country tremble. At this time, huge white bones, each dozens of meters long, floated out of the palace and bathed in the vermilion bird's flames. These white bones were the remains of the sage ancestor and had not been burned by the artificial sun. He still had the bloodline of a nascent soul cultivator. Adhering to the principle of recycling waste, Jiang Tian took 24 ribs and a section of the spine. He divided his attention and refined them into spiritual treasure-level flying swords and sword boxes, bestowing them to his disciples. Is this true Immortal Jiang's other divine body? It's actually an ancient divine beast, the vermilion bird. Iye's heart skipped a beat. He felt that the power of this vermilion bird was too great. It was like a great sun in the sky, as if it could burn the heavens. Around it, the stars and constellations on the star map in the sky seemed to have come to life. They avoided it with fear, not daring to get close to it. It's too powerful. I'm afraid that even 10 divine ancestors together wouldn't be able to defeat Kong Teichu. Lu Huaxi's eyes were wide open. The depth of Jiang Tian's foundation was beyond his imagination. Right then, the light emitted by the vermilion bird's divine body was already stronger than the artificial sun. Many sacred beings of the light sect felt their divine souls, bodies and energy rapidly growing. This is the light of Kong Teichu's divine body. It's very beneficial for our cultivation. Absorb it immediately. The sacred lord of the third sacred mountain was the first to react. He immediately sat cross-legged with his 5 fingers facing the sky as he used the stellar condensation technique to absorb the holy light. The light of a true God? Oh God, absorb it quickly. It's very beneficial for us. Next to him, Yi Xiaomen, Mei Ji and the others looked at the vermilion bird in the sky with admiration and started to cultivate. At this moment, Jiang Tian was like a true god in their eyes. Bathing in his grace would bring them endless benefits. After a day, after Jiang Tian fully sensed the vermilion bird radiant divine physique's concept, he gradually withdrew his body and sat cross-legged on the ground. Boom! The vermilion bird shrank like a tired bird returning to its nest. In the end, it went into Jiang Tian's body like a swallow returning to the forest. Clang, clang, clang. The 24 spiritual-grade flying swords, which had been forged from the ribs of the sacred ancestor, were also inserted into the sword case made from the sacred ancestor's spine. They flew into the hall and landed in front of Jiang Tian. The divine body of the vermilion bird is finally complete. Jiang Tian slowly opened his eyes. Outside of his pitch-black pupils and the purple lightning ring, a halo of light was formed, shooting out a sharp and blazing light. If one were to magnify it 100 times, one would discover that this halo was completely composed of the true sun fire and the astral fire of the universe. There were also layers upon layers of the vermilion bird imprint. One look could incinerate the heavens and refine the sky with fire. Vermilion bird fire eyes. And this divine power was only one of the divine powers of the vermilion bird divine body. The vermilion bird was the most powerful divine beast of the fire element in the universe. The divine body derived from it was also one of the best divine bodies in the fire element. The divine fire of the vermilion bird was endless. Martial fire could kill people and destroy cities. When it reached the initial success level, it could melt gold and iron and burn everything. A wisp of flame could kill a golden core cultivator. When it reached the highest level, it could burn the sky and destroy the stars. Gentle fire could be used to make elixirs and build arrays. In the realm of cultivation, there were 12 types of sky fire, 12 types of earth fire, and 12 types of human fire. They were very magical and could be used to make many spirit pills and spirit medicines. Any cultivator who got their hands on them would treat them as treasures. But compared to Jiang Tian's vermilion bird fire, these divine fires were like a joke. They were not worth mentioning. And at this moment, within Jiang Tian's dantian, a blazing sun appeared, shining with boundless radiance. Shockingly, there was a vermilion bird soaring in the depths of it. At this moment, Jiang Tian's originally extremely violent and surging true essence had been compressed and condensed, and it slowly fell back to the 4th level of foundation establishment. In fact, Jiang Tian even wanted to suppress his true essence to the 3rd level of the foundation establishment level. He didn't want to pretend to be weak and humiliate himself. If he wasn't satisfied with a certain divine body in the future, he could crush it and have another chance to rebuild it. But he had no choice. His true essence was too strong and violent. It was comparable to that of several mid-grade golden core overlords and couldn't be compressed at all. He suppressed it to the 4th level of the foundation establishment level, and he had 4 divine bodies to share the true essence. 4th level foundation establishment level and the most powerful divine body of the fire element. This trip to heavenly state is very fruitful. A happy smile appeared on the corner of Jiang Tian's mouth. At this moment he was very confident. He wasn't afraid of the ruins of deity, not to mention West Earth. But then, a strong sense of longing and worry shrouded his heart. He couldn't wait to return to Earth and see Qing'e, his parents and friends. Qi Liao's bones are very tough. The sword he made is also very good. Jiang Tian looked at the bone sword and threw all the heavenly treasures into the sky-swallowing demon gourd. Then he took a deep breath and stepped out of the temple in front of everyone's expectant and shocked eyes. "We congratulate you, true immortal Jiang. May your cultivation progress, your dermic powers become profound, and you refine another undying body." Seeing Jiang Tian come out, everyone knelt on the ground and worshipped him with shock and respect in their eyes. Although Jiang Tian looked like a mid-stage foundation establishment level cultivator, he was actually able to defeat all the golden core overlords and nascent soul overlords at the same level. It was as if the divine ancestor had come back to life. The current Jiang Tian, even in the kingdom of heaven, could be said to be an immortal powerhouse. How could they not be afraid and worshipped? Jiang Tian nodded. Perfected immortal Jiang, about the divine ancestor's descendants. The 3rd sacred lord hurried to report. His face was full of fear, flattery, and pity, like a believer in front of a true god. "That's enough. I'm not interested." Jiang Tian didn't have the patience to listen anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Continue the hunt. I don't want any of the divine ancestors' descendants to live in this world. I'll be back in the future." "Yes." The sacred lords hurried to Cao. Everyone's faces changed. Yi Xiaoman said reluctantly, "Perfected immortal Jiang, are you going back?" "That's right." Jiang Tian nodded and walked towards a dimension portal on the 3rd sacred mountain. Almost every holy mountain had a portal that led directly to the earth realm, but there was only one from the earth realm to the kingdom of heaven. "Perfected immortal Jiang, this place has just been settled. Don't you want to stay for a few more days?" Yi begged. Jiang Tian had been in seclusion for the past few days. However, the destruction of the sacred hall was a big deal. Their authority had been suspended. After all, there were more than 1 billion living beings there. There were sacred mountains, cities, and so on. They all needed Jiang Tian to make decisions. "That's right. Perfected immortal Jiang, stay for a while longer. You can even stay here for a long time. After all, this is an alternate dimension. The spirit chi here is better than on Earth." Many saint sovereigns urged him to stay. They were reluctant to part with him. They had been practicing the stellar condensation art that Jiang Tian had taught them over the past few days. Their cultivation levels had improved a few times faster than when they had the artificial sun. This allowed them to realize how deep Jiang Tian's reserves were, and it was simply an inexhaustible treasure trove. Jiang Tian only had to give them a few words of guidance, and it would allow them to improve endlessly, so how could they be willing to let Jiang Tian leave? Earth will always be my homeland and my foundation. I have to go back. Jiang Tian smiled faintly, his gaze distant. Gradually, waves of murderous intent rose into the sky, sending chills down everyone's spines. I'm afraid West Earth can't sit still anymore. It's best if Tang Linglong has already taken care of them. Chapter 1066. It would be best if Tang Linglong had taken care of them. Don't let me see them. Otherwise, I will kill you until you regret coming to Earth. Jiang Tian thought as killing intent flashed in his eyes. Lu Huaxi looked at Jiang Tian sadly. He wanted to say something but stopped. Jiang Tian glanced at Lu Huaxi and smiled. Lu Huaxi, haven't you always wanted to overthrow the Saint Hall and lead the holy tribe of light and be the master of the Saint Hall? Now it's your turn. What? Lu Huaxi was dumbfounded. He could not believe it, as if he had been struck by lightning. As for the others, they all looked at Lu Huaxi enviously and looked at Jiang Tian with reverence. The master of the Saint Hall. This dimensional world was about the same size as Earth, but its spiritual chi was richer than Earth's. Who knew how many people coveted the position of the ruler of this world, fervently yearned for it. Even the descendants of the sacred ancient would fight over the position of Saint Emperor, or even the position of Lord of a sacred mountain, or the position of city magistrate. It was common for them to kill their own brothers and fathers. However, Jiang Tian did not care at all. It was as if he had given a bun to a beggar. Then he was so excited that his body trembled. He knelt on the ground and cried with gratitude. True celestial Jiang, you are the eternal master of heavenly kingdom. That will never change. However, little Ku is willing to represent true immortal Jiang when he is not around. Disciple congratulates the hottest sun in the kingdom of heaven, the highest ruler, the great leader, the great helmsman, and the great commander, true immortal Jiang. May he be forever healthy, may he live forever, may he live forever, may he have a long life, and may his magic power be deep. Jiang Tian nodded and said, You are the master of the Saint Hall, but the giant tribe will become the master of heavenly kingdom. You will be the emperor of heavenly kingdom, the president of the tenacious senate. Lu Huaxi will be responsible for you. After all, this world originally belonged to the ancient Wuxia and belonged to the Sky Tribe. Now it belongs to its master. Jiang Tian swept his gaze across the crowd and said coldly, I believe that no one has any objections, right? Of course not. I agree. Seconded. Of course. The Saint Hall will definitely lead the Holy Light clan to protect the Yi Empire. We won't hesitate to sacrifice our lives. True immortal Jiang is wise. Sacred ancestor Qi Liao and the other shameless scum seized power and disregarded morality. Now, it is reasonable to return it to the Sky Clan. Coming into contact with Jiang Tian's cold gaze, Lu Huaxi and the other holy masters shuddered in fright, not daring to disobey in the slightest. They immediately complied respectfully. Now, there were only a few tens of thousands of giants left. They could not be compared to the holy tribe of light. If Jiang Tian had said that he wanted the Titans to become the masters of this world, everyone would have laughed their heads off. Then, they would have swarmed up and trampled this reckless brat into the dust. But now, things were different. Jiang Tian had already killed sacred ancestor Qi Liao, trampled a holy king to death, overturned the Saint Hall, and transformed into a fourth divine body. His power was enough to destroy the world. If anyone dared to say no, they would probably be stabbed to death by Jiang Tian's finger. What? Yi was also in disbelief. The Sky Race will remember true immortal Jiang's righteousness and kindness for generations to come. True immortal Jiang's kindness will be remembered. Then, he was so emotional that tears streamed down his face. His entire body trembled violently as he kowtowed and said loudly. Yi Xiaoman felt as if she was in a dream. She felt dizzy as she kowtowed with the other tribesmen present. She was going to be a princess in the future? The Sky Clan was going to revive the country just like that? She did not even dare to think about it before. It was just an illusory dream. After all, the Sky Clan had already withered beyond words. Even if the Holy Light Clan did not do anything and allowed them to reproduce for 100 years, how could they have the power to challenge the Saint Hall and the Light Clan? All right, get up. Jiang Tian smiled faintly as if this earth-shattering event was just a casual matter. Originally, Jiang Tian had planned to let Yi and the Giant Clan rule the Heavenly Kingdom and the Saint Hall. But after thinking about it, he gave up in the end. If this conflict was too intense, there might be extremists of the Holy Light Clan who would not accept the rule and start a conflict. So, he used Lu Huaxi to rule the Holy Light Clan, which was equivalent to a layer of security to protect the Giant Clan. Lu Huaxi had given up his soul blood. He would not dare to betray Jiang Tian at all, unless he was tired of living. In the crowd, only the leader of the elf clan, Mei Ji, looked at Jiang Tian bitterly. She sighed secretly and felt a strong sense of regret in her heart. Now, although the Heavenly Kingdom was establishing an equal hierarchy, the elf clan was on equal footing with the Holy Light Clan in name. But it was definitely not like the Fallen Angel Clan and the Giant Clan, who were already in a dominant position. More importantly, she herself had not gained any benefits from Jiang Tian. If she had been discerning and recognized Jiang Tian's strength and followed him closely, perhaps she and her master would have a different fate. Jiang Tian ordered as he walked, casually replying to their requests. Soon, Jiang Tian arrived in front of a teleportation portal. The third sacred lord wanted to offer a protective jade tablet. But unexpectedly, under everyone's incredulous gazes, Jiang Tian did not use any secret techniques. He directly tore open the teleportation portal with his bare hands. Then he held Wang Lin's waist and stepped in. He tore open the teleportation portal with his bare hands. The power of the divine body is really strong. Everyone was shocked. Then, they all knelt on the ground and said in unison, "We respectfully send true immortal Jiang off." When they lifted their heads, they realized that Jiang Tian's figure had already disappeared into the distorted space door. While Jiang Tian was traveling through the portal. In India, Earth. During this period of time, the violent energy waves and vibrations from the portal above the Death Hill became stronger and stronger. It was as if a powerful being was about to open the portal and descend on Earth. "General Yi, what level do you think the overlords of West Earth can reach?" Keynes was a bit nervous and asked. Yi Tianren had retired a long time ago. That was his military rank, but Keynes respected him a lot, so he addressed him as such. According to Master, even if they can use a secret treasure to open the portal, they must be at the Foundation establishment level. They're slightly weaker than Master. But Master isn't here. Yi Tianren's expression turned serious as he explained the strength of a Foundation establishment cultivator. They're not afraid of high-temperature lightning? How fast can they break the sound barrier? They're even faster than the most advanced fighter jets. They can live up to 300 years or even longer. The more they listened, the more frightened they became. Their faces turned pale and cold sweat dripped down. A thought popped up uncontrollably. This was no longer a mortal life form. It was clearly the legendary deities and immortals, an alien life form of a higher level. Everyone was chatting. Suddenly, they heard a loud bang exploding in the portal. It was earth-shattering. Everyone couldn't help but look over in shock. The door shuddered violently as a lightning ball the size of a millstone floated out from it like a cocoon. The lightning ball grew bigger and bigger. In the end, it was more than 10 meters tall. It floated in the air, emitting endless bright light. Those lightning bolts were still in the posture of baring fangs and brandishing claws, but they were completely still. It showed that the other party's ability to control lightning was very high. The portal to West Earth is open. At this moment, everyone was shocked and their faces were extremely solemn. On the field, hundreds of thousands of soldiers loaded their guns and held their weapons tightly. The missiles rotated in unison and aimed at this place. A large golden hand reached out. The cocoon was instantly torn open from the inside, and a man who seemed to be made of gold stepped out. This man was the height of an ordinary person and had an Asian appearance. He was bald and wearing a long robe, but his body was completely wrapped in golden water. It was flickering, like a legendary true god. Stable lightning? Ball lightning? Through the scan, the metal content in this creature's body is more than 80%. Liquid metal? Is it life metal? The scientists present came from many world-class universities such as MIT and Cornell University. There were even a few Nobel Prize winners. They were stunned when they saw the data through the screen. In fact, everyone was shocked. Everything that happened in front of their eyes had exceeded their knowledge system. They felt as if their worldview had collapsed. Chapter 1067. At present, several groups from Harvard University, Cornell University, and MIT were working together to develop such a designable substance, an individual substance that could be automatically assembled into tools or parts. One of the clinical results was a sheet material that could self-fold into a three-dimensional shape according to needs. Another epoch-making technology that was being developed was military equipment that could automatically change positions or become parts and tools according to operational requirements. Their vision was that the created material would operate like a computer. The boundary between material and computer would become more and more blurred. Materials combined to become a computer, and computers worked like materials. But many designs were still in the stage of imagination and creativity. But the metallic human in front of them was just like what they had envisioned. The next scene made everyone even more amazed. The golden man took out a gourd-like magic artifact and chanted an obscure incantation. Suddenly, many lightning bolts came to life behind him. With a series of crackling sounds, they drilled into the gourd. And he, with a shake of his body, turned into a body of flesh and blood. The big sleeves of his yellow monk robe fluttered. He was barefoot and wore straw shoes. His body was huge, and his eyes were cold and disdainful, as if the world was nothing in his eyes. However, his skin was slightly dark, and his nose was bigger. He looked a little like an Indian. And after the lightning cocoon disappeared, a beautiful woman in a gorgeous dress and a young man in a long robe also walked out. They gave off a kind of otherworldly aura, as if immortals had descended to the mortal world. In particular, the woman was clearly wearing a traditional Indian dress, a sari. Bright gems, sequins, and many exquisite head ornaments, necklaces, bracelets, rings, and waist ornaments made her look even more luxurious and magnificent. The embroidered tulle was faintly discernible, revealing her graceful figure and her perfectly round and slender legs. She had a slender waist, revealing her flat belly and belly button. She looked mysterious, sexy, and charming. This is not an alien. It's clearly a human from Earth. And it's an ancient Indian. No, it's not a human. It's the true god of ancient India. The general of the Indian Ministry of Defense immediately said with joy, "This is not an enemy. This is the true god's manifestation. I have to go forward and communicate with them." In fact, he had always been hostile to Jiang and Tianqing school. Although the relationship between the Brahmin and the Indian government was relatively distant, they were still a force in India and had many followers. Now that they were wiped out by Jiang, he was very unhappy. If West Earth was willing to support India instead of invading, wouldn't India be able to suppress the entire world? Tang Linglong nodded and didn't stop them. However, she instructed coldly, "Tell the guests from West Earth to return immediately. Otherwise, we reserve the right to use force. Put down your weapons first. Don't be rude to the gods of India." The Indian general snorted and retorted, "If West Earth supports India, what does Wuxia and Xianxia count for? Then we will catch up from behind. This isn't inferior to an extraterrestrial civilization." He took a helicopter and flew closer. Then, surrounded by several generals and guards, he quickly stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Respected guests from West Earth, I'm the General of India's Ministry of Defense. I hope that we can have a friendly discussion." The monk didn't even look at him. He also ignored the many planes, cannons, and steel defense lines. His arrogance soared into the sky as he looked down and said coldly, "Where is Kong Techu of Tianqing School? Come out and die." He spoke in Sanskrit, but there were various linguists present and immediately translated it. Yi Tianren was well versed in both Chinese and Western languages and also understood. His expression immediately changed slightly. Tang Linglong took a step forward and said loudly through the battlefield broadcast, "Please return to your West Earth immediately. Otherwise, we reserve the right to use weapons." The Indian general immediately became anxious and roared loudly, "This is our ancient Indian god, Tang Linglong. If you dare to attack, India will not allow it." When everyone saw this, they were so angry that they stomped their feet. Keynes shouted angrily, "Where do you think the United Nations Alliance Army is? Have you forgotten our agreement? Are you going to publicly tear up the white paper on Earth's joint defense?" It's just as Master guessed, only Yi Tianren wasn't surprised. He only shook his head gently. Jiang Tian had long guessed this possibility. India might have some kind of illusion that they would become the descendant faction and support West Earth. Moreover, Jiang Tian had also said that even if India surrendered, they wouldn't have a good ending. No dimensional world would treat humans as equal life forms. There might be a period of conciliation, but in the end, they would either be exterminated or enslaved. Earth was too small for the dimensional worlds, and the spiritual energy was too little. Even if they recovered, they wouldn't give humans on Earth much space to live. We, India, have always been looking forward to and supporting the descent of West Earth. Please build a base here in India. Let's defeat Sidoni, America, and the United Kingdom that once colonized us." The Indian general knelt on the ground in front of the guest from West Earth and worshipped him with a fawning expression. He said with a fawning expression, "On behalf of the Indian authorities, I convey to you that we are willing to be your most loyal believers and slaves." The other Indian generals and many guards also knelt on the ground. Their eyes were pious as if they were looking at a true god. The Indian people were very magical. They were superstitious about reincarnation and were polytheistic. They believed in all kinds of gods and didn't pay attention to reality. There were many unimaginable things. There was once an old man in India who believed in Lord Shiva. He abandoned his wife and cultivated diligently for 40 years. In order to pursue the descent of Lord Shiva, he raised his right hand high for 40 years and never put it down. As a result, his right hand became diseased and was like a withered branch. He was in great pain, but it couldn't change his belief. At this moment, seeing this miracle, they immediately wavered and prostrated themselves in worship, willing to be slaves. "Weak worm, you want to be my slave?" The person dressed as a monk bent down and looked down at everyone. He laughed strangely and said, "Do you know what my slave is like? Do you think you are worthy?" This time, he actually spoke in English, very fluent English. The Indian general was confused and stunned. Deep in his heart, there was even a little anger gathering. He was a general of a country after all. In this country, his words carried a lot of weight. Even in the world, he had a lot of say. However, he was not worthy of being their slave. That was too arrogant. Remember, ants are not qualified to be the slaves of the gods of West Earth. The monk laughed out loud. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand. Lightning erupted and enveloped the Indian general, instantly turning him into ashes. The lightning flashed and disappeared in an instant. It was extremely fast. In everyone's intuition, it was the monk who stretched out his hand and the general of India disappeared silently from where he stood. The other Indian generals and guards were stunned. "Open fire!" 3 seconds later, seeing him slowly raise his hand again, a guard reacted and screamed as he fired at him. The others were also awakened by the gunshots and opened fire. The monk raised his hand, and the bullets floated in the air motionlessly. They could not hurt him at all. Human weapons are so low level. They have no souls. The monk raised his hand and pinched a bullet. He sized it up with interest and grinned. Boom. He stomped his foot and the lightning around him exploded like a waterfall. In an instant, all the Indians within a kilometer radius were turned into ashes and disappeared from the spot. The monk shouted, "So that you will know when you die. I am the monk of Layin Mountain, Xiang Long." This woman was Ai Lian, an elite disciple of Tingyu Tower. This handsome young man was the guardian elder of the Changshan sect, Luo Ming. Kasayapa Guru was one of his disciples. The guardian elder of the Changshan sect. Kasayapa Guru's master. Everyone looked at the young man in shock. Brahman was the descendant of the Changshan sect on earth. This man was the guardian elder of the Changshan sect, and his status was much higher than Kasayapa Guru's. The young man's face was handsome and his skin was fair. However, his eyes were as indifferent as an ancient well without any ripples. It was unknown how many years this old monster had lived. The guardian elder Luo Ming's eyes were cold and murderous. "Kong Te Chu, do you want to die? How dare you destroy my sect on earth and kill my disciple? I will kill 3 million people on earth to wash away the hatred in my heart." Chapter 1068. Kill 3 million people? This person is ruthless. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Even Keynes shouted. Luo Ming had openly declared that he would kill 3 million people. They consider themselves to be immortals, high and mighty. They treat us as ants and think that their civilization can crush us. Yi Tianren's eyes were like torches as he said coldly, "Think about it. If we want to get rid of a nest of termites, will we give them a heads up? Will we negotiate? Will we care about the reaction of the ants? Just kill them. There's nothing to talk about. First, he can control metal. Second, he can unleash lightning." However, Tang Linglong analyzed leisurely and then ordered, "Robots, go forward and test his strength. All data receiving departments, get ready." "Robots move." A Sky Army officer said. "Push, push, push, push." The robots jumped out from behind the bunkers and crossed hundreds of meters in one leap. When they landed, the ground shook. These robots were a few kilometers away from the three of them, but in just a few breaths, a total of a dozen robots and robotic beasts had crossed over to the three of them. The leader of robot number 1 clenched his fists. Sharp claws like Wolverine emerged from the tip of his fists. The leader of robot number 2 held a shield and a spear, like an indomitable divine general. The leader of robot number 3 was bald, with a scar painted on the top of his head. His outer armor was also painted yellow like a monk's robe. He held a titanium alloy rod in his hand. He shook it slightly and let out a strange howl. Their movements were agile as if they had intelligence. Their reaction speed was extremely fast, completely surpassing the products of any international factory today. There was a hint of envy in Kane's eyes. This was not a mechanical exoskeleton, but a real robot made of titanium alloy, extremely cold metal, and biological materials. It was equipped with crystal energy batteries. Whether in terms of endurance or attack power, it was beyond ordinary and had achieved mass production. However, these robots were not developed by the United States, but jointly developed by the Sidoni Academy of Sciences and the Sky Army. Before, whether it was a mechanical exoskeleton or a robot, the energy device was an urgent obstacle that needed to be solved. The original lithium batteries and graphene batteries were too small, too big, too heavy, and had poor endurance. These aspects severely limited the application of mechanical exoskeletons and robots. However, based on the theories of heavy fusion technology such as the extreme flaming crystals and the explosive crystals, Sidoni had already developed such an advanced crystal energy battery. The battery, which was the size of a fingernail, could provide them with energy for 3 days and 3 nights of continuous exercise. At present, Hua Xia's military had already purchased these robots in bulk. In terms of military equipment usage, the United States was once again inferior. After all, this thing was simply a killing machine on the battlefield, a harvester of human lives. If a robot was equipped with heavy firepower such as armor-piercing bullets and incendiary bombs, It could rival an armored division and kill tens of thousands of people. Hee. Robot number 3, the program I entered is Wulong Bagua Stick. This batch of robots was codenamed Guashu Grandmaster. Behind them, there are still shooting experts and robot beasts. Zhang Qing'an's face was filled with joy. His smile was as bright as a child looking at his favorite toy. These crystal energy robots were all developed by him. Puppets! Puppets! Seeing this, Luo Ming revealed a look of great interest. The development of Earth's obscene techniques is really rapid. If we occupy them, there's no need to kill them. It's good to let them be our slaves. As for Xianglong and Irene, they were also a little surprised. It seemed that they couldn't believe that there would be puppet beasts here. In the cultivation world, puppet beasts were generally created by master refiners. Moreover, they had to be proficient in formations, talismans, and many other kinds of knowledge. Even in the West Earth world, to be able to own a puppet beast, one had to be a sect master-level powerhouse. Most of them raised slightly intelligent beasts as pets, mounts, or servants. Kill! As the command was issued, robot number 3 was the first to rush out. Its speed was comparable to the sound barrier. The long rod made of titanium alloy swept towards the 3 of them. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and sand and stones flew. This attack could flatten a tank. Humph! If you want to kill me, you're still far from it. Luo Ming snorted coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain. He slapped the back of his head and opened his mouth to spit out a small sword that was about an inch long. This sword grew larger in the wind and turned into a 3-foot-long green blade. He held the sword in his hand and with a swoosh, the long sword swept out. Suddenly, robot number 3's titanium alloy long rod broke. It was cut in half by the sword light and fell to the ground. Strength test data, speed data, attack temperature data. Suddenly, a lot of data, like a waterfall, flashed on the command center's computer, shocking a group of people. Tang Linglong, on the other hand, was very calm, because she didn't plan to rely on these robots to deal with the 3 of them. The cultivation of the 3 of them should be at the late stage of the foundation establishment stage. Jiang Tian and Yi Tianren had seen the data of these robots and thought that they were only comparable to the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. It would be very difficult for them to face the strong of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. However, this was already very difficult. Now, the ruins of immortality and the multidimensional worlds could invade at any time. Who could resist them? As for the crystal energy robots, they had been mass-produced. Now, Tianjun was equipped with more than 3,000 of them, and Huaxia was equipped with more than 10,000 of them. They could at least resist the attack of the strong of the foundation establishment stage. At the critical moment, they didn't know how many people they could save. Moreover, more could be cast, and there was still room for improvement in performance. Therefore, Jiang Tian supported this project at all costs. The second wave of attack, continue. Hit that bald monk and that witch for me. Pay attention to the data collection. Tang Linglong gave the second order. Immediately, the crystal energy robots number 1 and number 2 led the other robots and swarmed forward to attack the 3 of them. The 2 sides fought together. It was obvious that the 3 strong people of West Earth had an overwhelming advantage. Bang! Robot number 1's sharp steel saber, which was like Wolverine's claws, quickly slashed down. Ellen's body moved to the side, and the steel saber cut into the stone wall. The stone wall was like tofu, splitting into pieces. Robot number 1 had just turned around, but before it could make a second move, Ellen's jade-white palm had already slapped out at lightning speed, imprinting on robot number 1's chest. The special metal that could withstand artillery fire had a shallow palm print on it, but it wasn't damaged. Robot number 1's feet brushed against the granite ground as it retreated. His feet left 2 deep marks on the hard ground. Flames splashed everywhere, and he crashed into pieces of broken walls, causing smoke and dust to rise. It was not until he had retreated more than half a kilometer and sunk into a slope that he managed to stop his footsteps. This delicate woman's palm has the strength of 50 tons. It can destroy the most advanced tank. Keynes looked at the data transmitted back and was shocked. Is this still a human? Many scientists and military experts present were dumbfounded and exclaimed, "I wonder if robot number 1 can withstand it." Everyone's eyes were filled with concern. Zhang Chenzhen also wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. It could be seen through the screen. Robot number 1 crawled out of the slope and staggered a few steps, but its body paused and froze on the spot. Black smoke billowed out of the gap in front of its chest. With a series of crackling sounds, it exploded with sparks and fell to the ground. The outer shell isn't seriously damaged, but the intense tremors caused the array chip and the electrical conduction system to collapse. It seems that this part needs to be strengthened. Zhang Chenzhen borrowed the computer and remotely analyzed the damage of robot number 1. A trace of worry appeared on his face. Chapter 1069. Yes. They're evenly matched. Yi Tianren nodded solemnly. Jiang Tian was still at the qi refinement level back then. Of course, he had already forged the gung metal divine body and his combat power was comparable to an early-stage foundation establishment overlord. However, the 3 people in front of him were clearly at the late stage of the foundation establishment overlords. Boom! The missiles pierced through the sky like a rain of swords and headed straight for them. The monk shouted continuously, "Open! Open! Open! Open!" He parted at least 100 missiles. These missiles either exploded around him or landed on the ground. It was as if a huge firework had suddenly exploded. At that moment, the ruins of Death Hill had become a sea of fire. Smoke billowed in the sky and huge craters more than a few meters deep appeared on the ground. Even a layer of granite had been shaved off. However, the launch of the missiles had obviously stopped their progress. After they advanced 10 kilometers, their speed suddenly slowed down. Otherwise, with their supersonic speed, they would only need a minute or 2 to reach the command center. We've collected a lot of data about the missile attack. Zhang Chenzhen and the other scientists reminded them. At that moment, they were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat. The enemy's speed was too fast. If they didn't stop them in time and let them reach their peak speed, they would rush into the command center in a minute. Yes, I understand. Tang Linglong's face was cold. At that moment, an uncontrolled missile exploded around the monk. In an instant, his body was covered in blood and his skin was torn open. However, he had used a secret technique. Immediately, a golden liquid flowed on the surface of his body. A moment later, he completely recovered as if he had never been hit by the explosion. "You've successfully angered me." The great monk Xianglong felt the pain and angrily roared. His face instantly became murderous and his eyes were as sharp as a knife, full of malice and resentment. He grabbed the air with both hands and suddenly, a giant palm formed by golden essence qi gathered in the air. The giant palm grabbed at least 100 missiles and then threw them out as if they were soybeans. Boom, boom, boom. It was as if a rain of missiles had fallen on the defense line. They exploded one after another, causing the earth to tremble and flames to shoot into the sky. Mountains were razed to the ground and tanks were overturned. They lay on the ground like dead turtles. Rustle, rustle. Inside the HQ, the ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Cement particles fell, and Keynes lay on the ground, shivering. When the tremor subsided, he looked up and saw that Yi Tianren, Tang Linglong, Sasaki Haisha, and the other Tianqing school students were still standing there. He could not help but feel ashamed. He looked at the damage report on the screen and said embarrassedly, "Thank goodness. Luckily, General Yi once reminded us that the enemy might have weapons of mass destruction, so our soldiers dug very deep bunkers and focused on long-range attacks. This time, only a few people died. Otherwise, 10,000 people will definitely die." Tang Linglong glanced at the 3 red dots on the monitor. In the blink of an eye, the enemy had broken through another 2 kilometers. They were less than 10 kilometers away. In half a minute, they could break through to the headquarters. At this time, Tang Linglong pressed on the earpiece and said coldly, "Absolute beginning, Kulyan fire." Above the Indian Ocean, waves rolled, blue sky, and white clouds. The aircraft carrier Absolute beginning floated on the ocean like a continent. Many generals and soldiers were on standby. They heard the order. A special model Kuelian suddenly trembled. The cannon barrel let out a shrill cry. Several blue light beams that were several times thicker than the Roman columns spewed out and pierced through the sky. The horn of death sounded. The light beams were like pillars that supported the sky, as if they could pierce through the sky. They were extremely sharp and wild. They flashed in the sky and shot toward India. Humph! You're just ants. This monk can kill 10,000 people with one strike. Ha! On the battlefield of Death Hill, Xianglong flew toward the headquarters while laughing wildly and triumphantly. With a slap of his giant palm, a few tanks were destroyed. With a stomp of his foot, a fortress collapsed. He did not know that the missiles he fired just now did not kill many people, so he was fighting to his heart's content. At this time, the missiles on the battlefield had stopped firing. Xianglong floated in the air and stood with his hands on his waist. He roared loudly, "Where's Kong Teichu? Why doesn't he dare to come out? He must be afraid of me, right? Ha, tell him not to be afraid. Come out and I'll kill him. I heard that he's quite handsome. What's the use of letting him be my boy toy?" Ellen rolled her eyes at him and covered her mouth with a smile. She said seductively, "Oh, you're so despicable. The human race on Earth is filthy, just like those beasts. How can you do that?" Although she was charming and sexy, and her voice was soft and pleasant, with a hint of laziness and magnetism, her mouth was very vicious. Her eyes were cold. "In my opinion, this person must be killed. And his body must be cut into thousands of pieces and executed. Also, his family must be skinned and executed. Then, we'll tour all the countries on Earth for 3 years. Only in this way can we serve as a warning to others and form the most advantageous deterrence. We'll let those ants on Earth know the consequences of offending the holy land of West Earth." Luo Ming chuckled mischievously. "It's also good to be Xianglong's boy toy. Is this a kind of humiliation? Isn't he the most powerful person on Earth? We'll trample on the people on Earth and humiliate them in every way possible, completely destroying the self-confidence of the human race on Earth." The corners of his mouth curled up. His eyes were malicious and vicious, but his face was full of disdain. A group of low-level creatures living in a dirty garbage dump. How can they be called humans? They're even worse than animals. This time, let's show them what the most powerful person on Earth, Kong Teichu, is and how vulnerable he is. They were talking, but they deliberately used a secret method to make their voices very loud and talk in Wuxia language so that the martial arts masters and generals present could hear them clearly. They were humiliating Jiang Tian and shaking the morale of the Earth Coalition army at the same time. "Kong Teichu, come out and meet your master. Kneel down and kowtow to this penniless monk and become this penniless monk's pet. If you serve this penniless monk well and make this penniless monk happy, I will show you mercy and spare your life." "What? You don't dare to come out? Don't worry, I'll be very gentle to you." Xianglong looked disdainfully at the 100,000 troops as if they were nothing. He slowly flew over. He thought that Jiang Tian did not dare to come out and fight with him, so he was even more arrogant and domineering. He tried his best to mock Jiang Tian to come out. At this time, Tang Linglong rose from the command center like a dragon and said with a smile, "Xianglong monk, my master is not here." "Secluded cultivation? Injured? Don't talk about those useless things. You're obviously afraid of me." Xianglong laughed wildly and was very proud. In fact, he did not want to come to Earth at all. The spiritual chi here was thin and dirty. It was obviously a dirty and tiring job. But then, he realized that it was quite fun to be arrogant on Earth. Speaking of which, he was only an arhat in Mount Lain. There were many leaders, elders, abbot, sect master and elders above him. He had no status at all. But it was different on Earth. He could be called the ancestral patriarch and suppress the entire world. No wonder Jia Yi didn't want to come back after working on Earth for so long. "It's really fun here. Why don't I just stay here and enjoy endless glory and wealth after conquering the Earth realm?" Xianglong Mei thought unhappily. My master is afraid of you? Tang Linglong sneered and said, My master has gone to heaven. My master has already slaughtered his way up to heavenly country. He must have already crushed the sacred halls and slaughtered heavenly country. The next one will be your West Earth. After hearing that, the three experts of West Earth looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their expressions changed drastically, and their eyes were filled with astonishment and disbelief. Chapter 1070. Don't try to fool me. Xianglong was stunned for a second, then he regained his composure. He didn't believe it at all. He laughed and said, For thousands of years, no one on Earth has been able to conquer heaven, Westland, or any other dimension. This place is a land of animals and a garbage dump. Then he looked at Tang Linglong with a sneaky look and laughed evilly. Then he roared again, Jiang Taichu, you don't dare to come out, right? Why don't you let your disciple take your place? This little girl is pretty cute. I've always liked both men and women. I love love with impartiality and non-aggression. When she gets a taste of that wonderful feeling, she won't be able to leave. Tang Linglong's eyes became colder. You're about to die, but you don't know. Then she shot into the air and hid behind cover. HM? Missiles again? Are you guys retarded? Can't you see that I'm not afraid of missiles anymore? Xianglong suddenly looked up. In the sky, a few missile-like objects shot out blue tails that were a few kilometers long and whistled through the sky. This missile was obviously more powerful, but Xianglong was not afraid. Instead, he taunted with a face full of mockery. He taunted Xianglong, I heard that you've developed nuclear weapons. That's the most powerful weapon in the world. Come on, come and hit me. Yeah. Let them release their nuclear weapons. If we can withstand it, we will destroy their confidence. Luo Ming's lips curled into a mocking smile as he thought to himself. Xianglong, these missiles are extraordinary. If you control them and destroy this army of 100,000, you and I will become famous. Superpowers like Wuxia and the United States of America will have to submit to us. Then we'll use them as our base to defeat Sidoni and Tianqing School. It'll be much easier to kill Kong Taichu. Irene also looked at the sky and showed a hint of disdain. Then she spoke to Xianglong using her soul energy. HM, that's a good plan. Xianglong raised his hand and grabbed at the air. A huge golden palm soared into the sky. However, the moment he sensed the violent energy contained within the Heaven Splitter Hammer heavy cannons, his expression changed drastically. His eyes widened as he exclaimed, Run! Go back. It was too late for Xianglong to retract his golden palm. The Heaven Splitter heavy cannon broke through 20 times the speed of sound, and the pressure was extremely violent. The overwhelming pressure was transmitted to the hands and arms of Dragon Slam's true body through the golden palm. He felt like he was being pressed down by a 10,000-ton mountain. No matter how hard he struggled, he was still pressed to the ground. What is this? Such terrifying strength. AI Lien and Luo Ming's cultivation bases were inferior to his, so they were in an even more miserable state. They were one step ahead of him, and they were like toads that had been slapped by a giant god. Amidst their cries and screams, they heavily smashed onto the ground. Their clothes exploded, their flesh lacerated, and blood flowed out. At this moment, a total of 5 sky splitters exploded at the same time. With the 3 of them as the core, a dazzling sea of lightning exploded within a radius of 3 kilometers. The destructive power of the sky splitters was far greater than that of nuclear weapons. It could even kill a core formation stage cultivator. The 3 of them were only in the late stage of the building foundation stage. How could they withstand it? In an instant, AI Lien let out a miserable scream, but then it came to an abrupt end. It was because her protective wind, which could withstand thousands of degrees of heat, had been shattered. Then, dozens of dazzling light shields burst out around her body. Those light shields were all good magical equipment. If they had been detonated at any other time, they would have been able to withstand the bombardment of missiles. But at this moment, the magical equipment and the shields had been shattered in less than a second. In the end, the endless pressure, the extreme heat, and the vast thunder and lightning shattered her into pieces like porcelain. She was reduced to ashes and powder, which drifted away in the air. Until the moment of her death, deep fear and shock were still lingering on her charming face, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. On Earth, where the spiritual energy was running dry, the weak human beings had been able to create such powerful and evil magical equipment. What kind of magical equipment is this? How could it be so terrifying? Luo Ming was bombarded by the sea of thunder and lightning. He was tossed up and down like a small boat in the middle of a huge wave. He seemed to be stronger. He had withstood the attack for a few seconds, but there were already countless horrifying wounds all over his body. He was bleeding profusely. His internal organs were also injured by the pressure, which caused internal bleeding. Blood was spurting out of his eyes, ears, and mouth like arrows. I can't die. The Changshan sect seeks eternal life. I have lived for 1,000 years. How can I die? His eyes were filled with fear and madness. He roared like an injured beast. He unleashed his magical power continuously to protect himself. He exerted all his strength to dash out. In fact, after he unleashed his protective magical power, his hair had turned gray. He had chicken skin and a crane's head. His body was hunched and trembling, which made him look very old. That's right. This kind of protective magical power forcibly condensed a magical energy shield at the cost of sacrificing one's lifespan. Even if he could escape, this body could only last for 2 or 3 months. He had to find a new body to possess. However, under the combined attack of the endless sea of thunder, pressure, and high temperature, he could only dash out a dozen meters. He howled to the sky and his body was shattered. He completely disappeared from this world. The Changshan sect cultivated the art of reincarnation. They also had a secret technique to strengthen the divine soul. Otherwise, the divine soul would have been destroyed and exhausted in the repeated possession. His divine soul was not comparable to Jiang Tian's soul energy, but it could survive for a few years after leaving the body. It even had a certain level of magical power. However, under the endless power of the Sky Splitter Hammer, this divine soul didn't even last a second. It was shattered with endless despair and unwillingness. I have an indestructible body and I cultivate Thunder Dharma spells. How can I not withstand it? At this moment, the arrogance and domineering attitude of monk Xianglong disappeared. It was replaced by endless fear and horror. He was also extremely surprised. In today's battle, he was no longer afraid of the magnificent defensive line formed by the 30,000 soldiers. He was no longer afraid of tanks, planes, missiles, and artillery. Although these fancy tricks were weird, their lethality was too weak. However, he was a bit surprised by the puppet beasts and puppets. He could tell that these things were different from the artillery machines. His immortal will had scanned them and found that they were densely packed with array patterns. When the Sky Splitter Hammer cannon exploded, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The cannon not only shot out shrapnel, steel balls, and metal liquid, but also terrifying lightning, immeasurable pressure, and endless heat. He had the body of diamond, which was extraordinary. He shouldn't be afraid of heat and fire at all. The secret technique of Thunder Mountain allowed him to control lightning. He could control lightning as if it was his own arm. However, he couldn't withstand the high temperature and lightning at this moment. After one breath, one of his arms and shoulders exploded. Cracks and burns were all over his body. Even his internal organs were ruptured. He opened his mouth and vomited blood. He couldn't stop at all. The sea of lightning lasted for a minute before slowly dissipating. I'm going to skin you alive. At this moment, Monk Xianglong was both shocked and furious. He couldn't wait to rush to the command center and kill Tang Linglong and the others. But suddenly, a few small black dots appeared in the sky. Monk Xianglong was shocked again. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The technology on Earth was too annoying. The launcher of this evil weapon was at least thousands of kilometers away from him. If he couldn't destroy the launcher, he could only be attacked. His body was damaged and he suffered a great loss. At this moment, although he hated Jiangtian and Tianqing school to the core and wanted to kill tens of thousands of people to vent his anger, he knew that the situation was extremely unfavorable for him. Therefore, he didn't want to fight anymore. He jumped into the air, crushed a spiritual artifact, and fled into the distance. The spiritual artifact was actually the key to forcibly open the portal. Suddenly, the earth in the area of the Death Hill trembled. Magical power gushed out, and the lightning portal condensed in the sky above the Death Hill. Although his shoulder was injured, his legs were still intact. Under the influence of fear, his magical power was also at the highest level. Therefore, he flew 10 kilometers away in just 1 second. But at this moment, surface-to-air missiles hidden in the bunkers rose into the air and shot toward him from all directions. These missiles didn't want to kill him at all. They just wanted to stop him from escaping. It would only take a few seconds. In addition, they could also increase the power of the Sky Splitter's heavy artillery. Open! 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 Monk Xianglong was like a drowning person who was entangled by some seaweed. He was upset, exasperated, and anxious to the extreme. He roared at the top of his lungs and punched and kicked like a mad tiger. Under his magical power, the missiles were blown away one by one. Some even cracked and exploded. It's close. It's even closer. Seeing that the portal was only 1 kilometer away from him, tears of joy flowed out of Monk Xianglong's eyes. At this moment, he wanted to swear to the heavens that as long as he could go back alive, he would never come to Earth again. He would never come back even if he was beaten to death. Whoever said that this place was easy to bully, he would be angry with them. It was simply too terrifying. With such a terrifying and evil spiritual artifact, not to mention a Foundation establishment cultivator, even a golden core cultivator would be killed in one hit. Fortunately, he had the diamond constitution and could control lightning, so he could hold on for a few breaths. However, at this moment, a heaven-splitting hammer, heavy cannon exploded with a loud bang above his head. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.